This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 10, and I don't particularly enjoy this, but nobody else does it, so I feel that I have to. Nigel Farage there in your news bulletin, but bizarrely not in the studio, or not actually commenting live on the story. If you're under any confusion whatsoever about why that is, why the most publicity-hungry man in the country suddenly seems to be keeping a very low profile, it's because he's absolutely terrified of being asked about Russian bribes and his schoolboy racism and anti-Semitism, or at least the recollections of his contemporaries at Dulwich College of his extraordinary anti-Semitism and racism, some of which he denies, although, as with Nigel Farage, of course, it's always hard to know where the denials end and the obfuscation begins. But that's why, in case you were worried, that's why he's not popping up like he ordinarily does at the first sign of a publicity opportunity to start wanging on about something tangentially linked to whatever it is in the news. Very, very low profile. He can't keep it up forever, but he will be watching the clock in the hope, probably the justified hope, that the majority of people who do what we do for a living will give him another free pass or let him off the hook if he just keeps his head down for long enough. I don't know if I needed to clear that up or explain it for you, but as I mentioned, nobody else is going to, so once again it falls to me. It falls to... I don't know what to do about this. I've mentioned it to you many, many times. I've probably bored you senseless with my own concerns about it. But the way in which our newspapers, yawn, set the agenda, the conversational agenda, is simply a fact of life. For my generation, possibly not for yours, or you may have a rather better palette, if you like, of influence. I probably turn first now to Substacks and blogs, as we used to call them, to which I subscribe. I should probably make a little list of the ones that I actually pay to access in case you want to follow my example. One of them is incredibly funny. That's the one that Henry Morris writes. I subscribe to Ian Dunt's Substack. I subscribe to David Aronovich, the former Times columnist's Substack. I subscribe to the Père et Fils, the father and son Substack that is done by Sam Friedman and his father Lawrence. And I subscribe to a few more as well. And partly because I get all the newspapers provided for me when I come into work, so I can cast my net a little wider. There aren't many who I turn to with a genuine sense. By now I'm talking about the newspapers, the ones I turn to with a lovely sense of trepidation and expectation are mostly the bloggers and the Substackers. The same is probably true for you. There aren't many newspaper columnists left to whom I turn with a sense of trepidation and expectation, as in I'm going to be illuminated or challenged or entertained. That's not true. Most Daily Mail columnists entertain me enormously, but just not intentionally so. And I wrestle daily, as you know, with the, what's the word that I want? With the imbalance between influence and impact. The way that these newspapers still set the conversational agenda. Sky News, BBC, Channel 4, ITV, all of us look at the newspapers to get an idea of what we should be talking about. And there's no other way of doing it, sadly. Even I can't do it here. I can't launch a topic at 10 o'clock in the morning that I am introducing you to. I try occasionally, but hardly ever can I actually introduce you to a tale and have an interesting phone-in about it, because things need a little bit of time to percolate. They need a little bit of time to ferment, to brew, before we're ready to have a bit of a ding-dong about it or have a frank exchange of views. I'm kind of flirting with that today, although it's not my idea that I'm going to invite you to comment on. It's the idea of one of the columnists to whom I still happily turn with a degree of trepidation and expectation. It's not always justified, but more often than not, Daniel, now Lord Finkelstein, writing in the Times, is somebody who, it's almost enough to make you nostalgic for the days when you could disagree politically with somebody about almost everything, but find them really engaging and elucidating, find them really challenging and interesting. It's kind of the polar opposite of where social media has taken us, certainly where Twitter has taken us, where we all, well, I don't know quite what the leftish echo chamber on Twitter looks like anymore because I haven't been there for a year. But if you were to find it, then you are increasingly unlikely to be persuaded by anybody from outside it. Newspapers still allow us sometimes to have a little look at what somebody else is thinking in a way that we find really interesting and challenging, but don't necessarily end up agreeing with. And it is to Brexit that Daniel Finkelstein turns your attention this morning in ways that I was not expecting to see. There may be a yet in that sentence, but I don't know, to be honest with you. I do know that the winds of change are wafting over us. That's not a very pleasant that's not a very pleasant figure of speech. I don't think that's probably why it's never caught on. The winds of change are wafting over us. It sounds like a poem by E.J. Thribb, aged 17 3/4. The winds of change are wafting over us this morning because 2 or 3 things have happened. And I say 2 or 3 because it's possible that one of them is actually the same story but coming from 2 different areas. Everywhere you look, the obvious conclusion is being drawn. People got quite excited at the weekend because the Daily Telegraph, a newspaper whose comment pages never invite excitement, trepidation or expectation, except for whatever absolutely bonkers bilge they're going to be serving up on their comment pages today. But even a stop clock is right twice a day. And there was quite a lot of excitement at the weekend over a Daily Telegraph columnist writing under the headline, "Brexit has been an unmitigated economic failure." We can chalk that up there with "the Pope is a Catholic and bears sha-la-la-la-la-la-la in the woods." Statements of fact so utterly irrefutable that you wonder why they have to be made at all. But of course, the Daily Telegraph readers, these are marmalade droppers. These are spluttering indignation prompters, even though the facts are irrefutable. And it was Jeremy Warner, so you shouldn't necessarily see it as proof of a massive sea change because he's been fairly solid and fairly sensible on this issue from the very beginning. But he points out that Brexit is, like Banquo's ghost, the uninvited guest at the table. Everywhere you look, it is a major reason for why things are bad. And if it's not the reason for why they're bad, it's the reason for why they are worse than they should be. And he rightly points out that only Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrat leader, wants to talk about it. That at least was the case when he wrote this article on November the 29th. It has changed a little bit subsequently, as we will discuss in just a moment. Only 2 references to Brexit in the entire 197-page economic and fiscal outlook that the OBR published to accompany last week's budget. But, as we know, the polling is also pretty persuasive. One of the other stories came out of the United States, the National Bureau of Economic Research, a very august and uniformly respected organisation that found Brexit has reduced UK GDP by 6% to 8%, which is far more than previous estimates. Something that you won't be seeing in your Brexit-supporting media, whether it's broadcast or print anytime soon, is the simple fact that Project Fear was not extreme enough. What they liked to call Project Fear actually underestimated the things that you should have been fearing as a consequence of that ludicrous vote. Project Fear did not go far enough, which you are unlikely to see reported anywhere except here. I say that quite a lot. It's a little bit self-aggrandising and not entirely true. There are other people who are banging this particular drum, but I don't know how many of them you come into contact with on a regular, let alone a daily basis. So the National Bureau of Economic Research looks at the numbers, the facts, the stats, and finds that after 10 years, the predictions were a little bit too generous. 5 years, they got more or less right, but 10 years, things are even worse than previously feared. Investment down between 12 to 18%. Employment down by between 3 and 4%. Productivity down by between 3 and 4%. There have been, writes Jeremy Warner, in the Daily Telegraph, of all places, few more devastating assessments than this. Another one, a veteran of Tufton Street, writing in the Times newspaper under the headline, "We Brexiteers must acknowledge the costs of leaving Europe." And somebody who I'm pretty sure used to earn a mysterious crust from the so-called Institute of Economic Affairs, describes himself as being part of the small band of economists for Brexit. A small band indeed. I think it was 2 triangles and a trumpet. But nonetheless, of course, on every television programme that the BBC made, you had to get one of these clowns to sit in opposition to the people who knew what they were talking about and have subsequently been proved right. So I'm not minded to say better late than never to these people, or indeed to say well done for admitting that you're wrong. I'm still, I don't know, psychologically speaking, I'm still not there yet. Contempt for the con men, compassion for the con. So what do you do with a repenting con man? What do you do with somebody who was telling you to vote for it and is now saying, well, we must acknowledge that it was all a bloody disaster? Or the costs of leaving Europe. I don't care about the costs, I got my sovereignty back. Just please don't ask me to describe what it is, what I got back, or what the word sovereignty actually means. So that's 2. And then I think the research that I saw coming out of Stanford, as far as I can tell, it's probably based on the research that was coming out of the aforementioned august bureau. So that's why I said I wasn't sure if it was 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 stories. But there is, of course, another one. The official estimate has now doubled Brexit's hit to the UK economy. This is Bloomberg reporting that the impact has done twice as much damage to the UK economy than estimated by official forecasts. That is a group of experts that includes a senior Bank of England economist. So everywhere you turn, that they are absorbing this Bureau of Economic Research, which is the one that the Bank of England economist Philip Bunn contributed to. You've got former economists for Brexit, brackets, snigger, close brackets. You've got Daily Telegraph columnists. You've got Ed Davey. Latterly, I mean, this very week, you've got Keir Starmer finally talking about it, finally seeming set to weaponise Brexit in the context of reminding everybody what an idiot Nigel Farage is, which goodness knows people seem to still need reminding of. And Starmer, you can tell that things are changing because the Daily Mail is writing articles under the headline, "More Brexit betrayal fears as EU minister is promoted. Starmer signals closer ties with EU" is another headline, after a speech in which he sought to put relations with Brussels at the heart of its campaign. It was in the City of London on Monday night that he denounced Britain's departure from the European Union as an utterly reckless template for foreign policy and criticised the wild promises of those who had campaigned to leave in 2016. We should probably have a little listen to a bit of that, I think, which we will endeavour to do before the hour is out. And so there it is, culminating this morning in a very well thought out and well argued column from a Conservative peer, one of the masterminds, for want of a better word, behind David Cameron and George Osborne's political project, writing that it is the logical step for Labour to campaign on a platform of rejoining the single market. The political and economic case, he argues, is overwhelming. The headline, and the headline doesn't always marry completely, of course, with what follows, but the headline, logical step for Labour is to reverse Brexit, is not just an advice, but also a prediction. At the next election, Labour will campaign to overturn Brexit. The only thing that might foil this prediction is the party leadership's ability to defy overwhelming logic. And I think I agree with every single syllable. I think I do. And you know what happens when I think something? I ask you what you think, open to the possibility that I will shortly change my mind. So I think that I agree with every single syllable of this. But I want to know what you think. The argument is irresistible. The plan, the project, the entire thing has been a disaster. Anybody pretending that it hasn't been a disaster is either lying or deluding themselves with lines akin to, there is a brilliant Brexit, it just goes to a different school. Or that bloke I thought was brilliant, Boris Johnson, it's all his fault that it went wrong. The sovereignty that I sleep with every night is satisfying me on a level that I never imagined possible, so I don't care about the fact that employment has gone down, productivity has gone down, investment has gone down. Everything has gone down as a direct consequence of doing this. Nobody can argue effectively that all of our problems are caused by Brexit, but my goodness me, every single problem we've got has been magnified and exacerbated by the idiocy of that vote in 2016 and its subsequent implementation even. Britain is completely broken. Let's do nothing about it. That was how Finkelstein chose to satirise the Labour Party's position before the election. And now Brexit is completely broken. Let's do nothing about it is the reprise. So Starmer has nibbled at the edges of the need to reduce friction in trading with the rest of the continent. We've heard that song before. I think we even heard it from Rishi Sunak. But the idea that the time has come to actually tear the plaster off is one that I find absolutely fascinating. I know all of the arguments about the reluctance of the European Union to do anything by way of rapprochement or reuniting while we remain a basket case of a country. You've got Farage leading in the polls. You're not really going to be able to persuade at this point in time members of the European Union that they should stomach the expense, the toxicity, the energy of welcoming us back with open arms when there's a chance that another idiot will come along and drag us back out again at the next election, at a subsequent election. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking about what would happen in the event of us trying to rejoin the single market, a return to the single market, which would be a reversal of Brexit in all but name, and it would be doable. I'm asking whether or not you think Labour should campaign on a promise to overturn Brexit and rejoin the single market. Okay? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Is this rather splendid columnist? I know that there'll be things you're about to send me that are proof that he holds some opinions that I find repellent, but I'm sure I hold some opinions that he finds repellent. Is it actually time for Labour to tear off the plaster and heal the suppurating wound that is Brexit? And reasons that things you might want to consider. If I don't think I necessarily need to tell you this, but just in case I do, the tanks would be parked upon Labour's lawn immediately. I'm minded to suggest that doesn't matter. They're going to park tanks on Labour's lawn, whatever happens. A senior member of the OBR yesterday told MPs that Rachel Reeves didn't mislead anybody. A bit at odds with the narrative of the first 2 days of this week, but of course people who've been shouting liar, liar, liar at Rachel Reeves today are going to be pretending to be concerned about her schoolgirl chess career, without mentioning that the Select Committee yesterday heard evidence from the OBR which specifically and directly denied that she'd misled anybody about anything. More on that later in Missed Information. So fear of what the right-wing media would do, of course, is a thing, but should it be a big enough thing to do what Daniel Finkelstein describes this morning as indulging the Labour Party leadership's ability to defy overwhelming logic? Is there a cogent argument against Labour trying to reverse it? The Daily Mail will use the word betrayal. It will probably go further. It will move into language and rhetoric reminiscent of Joseph Goebbels. I don't use those words lightly, by the way, but that's what they did last time when they went after High Court judges, when they went after academic freedom, when they went after parliamentary democracy. 3 headlines I'll remind you of, because these are reasons why you might think it's too soon for Labour. Enemies of the people, to describe judges. A headline that Joseph Goebbels would have been proud of, but that Paul Dacre wrote. You've got our Remainer universities to describe academic freedom. A headline that various propagandists throughout history would have been proud of, but Paul Dacre wrote. And then you've got not enemies of the people, then you've got crush the saboteurs. Crush the saboteurs, a headline describing what should, in quotes, be done to elected parliamentarians voting according to the facts and their conscience. Crush the saboteurs, a front page headline that Joseph Goebbels would have been proud of, but which Paul Dacre wrote. So that's where the Daily Mail goes. in the event of Keir Starmer trying to get the country back to where it needs to be, obviously needs to be. Is that enough to make you wonder whether he should press pause? There you go. I wasn't expecting to have this phone in quite so soon, but the planets oddly have aligned this week in ways I hadn't foreseen. I wondered some time ago whether the Tories would be the ones to actually tear the plaster off or grasp the nettle of suggesting that we should reverse it and go back because everybody can see that it was a disaster. Everybody can see that it was a mistake. Still could be. It's not going to happen under Kemi Badenoch, but somebody's going to have to do it soon. And Ed Davey doesn't currently command a big enough party or movement to be the one who could lead it to fruition. Only really Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch. Only Labour or Conservative could do that. Farage might be the mother of all opportunists and about as honest as a £3 note, but I don't think even he would have the audacity, the front, the barefaced dishonesty to start campaigning to reverse Brexit. Although never say never with that character. So should Labour do this? Yes or no? And crucially, of course, on this programme, in the spirit of the late, great Brian Hayes, why? The why, always more interesting than the what. But we need the what to get to the why. 0345 6060 973. Should Labour campaign starting now on rejoining the single market?
James O'Brien on LBC.
Idiot's Corner is open for business as well, of course. I should have made that absolutely clear. And please don't confine yourself to texts. Give me a ring and tell me about all the laws you no longer have to obey, or about how your food's got cheaper, or immigration has gone down, or I can't think of all the other promises that were made at the time. Maybe we need a bit of a refresher. But here's a headline in the Times. Logical step for Labour is to reverse Brexit. Is that right? Junaid is in Fulham. What do you reckon?
Morning, James.
Hello.
Morning to you. And many thanks for raising this elephant in the room that no one wants to discuss except yourselves and the Liberal Democrats and the Times and a few others. Yes, of course they should. It's been hugely damaging. As you said many times in your programmes, lost a revenue of 70 to 90 billion, 17,000 fewer businesses trading at mile, selling goods to the European Union. And I think our European partners want it as well. It's going to be reciprocal in nature. They will access our markets or get rid of a lot of the red tape and bureaucracy that's happened. And there's a political argument to be had as well.
I'm jotting things down as you speak, but it was supposed to reduce red. How could anybody ever have believed that it was going to reduce red tape? Extraordinary, really. And we know what the answer is because people they trusted told them. And sadly, some of them still trust those people.
Yeah. I don't think Labour should fear much from what the political opponents have to say on this, because a certain amount of time will have passed when we get the next election, and people will see it in the economy. Now we have slow uptick in unemployment, weak, stagnating growth. I haven't read the article in the Times today, but I will do.
It's good.
And everyone can see it happening.
Would you have said this if I'd had this phone in a year ago? And to be fair, I probably did. Would you have felt the time was right then? Because I'm fairly sure I wouldn't. And that's the only kind of wriggle room I've got this morning is that maybe it's still too soon. Keir Starmer said, of course, not long ago that he couldn't see it happening in his own lifetime. But when the facts change, you change your mind. Have you held this view since pretty much 2016, or have you come to it surprisingly recently?
I mean, I personally am a staunch Remainer, and I would always want us to stay in.
But you'd have recognised have recognised that you couldn't have campaigned for that in 2017 or 2018 because the people have spoken, so to speak. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I mean, what I say is that a certain amount of time has to pass in the Parliament before Labour cannot keep on saying we've had 14 years of Tory mismanagement of our economy. There has to be a point where you have to look the other way and say, like, what is going to happen 10 years down the line? And, there are lots of geopolitical reasons why we should be in the European Union, as well as economic reasons.
But that was true in 2016. So where do we derive our confidence that the argument would be winnable this time? Yeah.
So, essentially, we have a much poorer country. And we have a lot of much poorer people to support, or people who are in work, claiming benefits. And either we can say we're not going to support these people, or we can say, realise, look, they're part of our society. They do need supporting. And we have a benefit system in place that does that. Now, we can argue about which benefits should be cut and everything, but the point is the country's poorer because of Brexit.
Yes.
And
we keep talking about everything else.
Significantly poorer. And you need a certain amount of labour, and this comes on to the question of freedom of movement and whether, but you need a certain amount of labour to make the country work. Unfortunately, we have a situation where there are lots of jobs that British people, we know this, don't want to do. And
even the jobs I think your average kind of saloon bar racist, when offered a straight choice between what they got and what they had before, would probably go for what they had before when it comes to freedom of movement. And I'm talking about racists now. I'm not talking necessarily about everybody who voted to leave. They would probably rather have a white foreigner behind the tills in their local Sainsbury's or behind the operating table at their local vet than a brown foreigner. And, call it the Boris wave or the inevitable upshot of casting a really stupid vote. They got the precise opposite of what they wanted. So there's loads of arguments there, but it doesn't mean that and they're all right. But what did we learn in 2016? That being right doesn't mean you win. Quite the opposite. Tony knows what I'm talking about in Essex, who is currently occupying Idiot's Corner with every single text he sent to the programme this morning. There have already been 3. I'll do them in anti-chronological order, so I'll start with the most recent. Here he is. No brain. That's a pun on my name, in case you don't realise. So my name is O'Brien. And Tony writes, no brain. And bless him, he's even put the apostrophe there as well. So no brain, that's a pun on my name. It's very funny. No brain, you sound like you're on the EU payroll to us, writes Tony in Essex. Shortly after sending loser in capital letters, James O'Brien on LBC Radio, still in capital letters, sulking over Brexit. What don't you understand, he asks. It was leave at any cost in capital letters, you prat, says Tony in Essex. So it was leave at any cost. So the things that you got that you can't list or name or mention were definitely worth the price of all the things you can list or name or mention. And I wonder whether there is, it's easy to take the mickey out of Tony, but that's it, isn't it? That's what they all are. It's just some of them are a bit posher. Jacob Rees-Mogg would have stuck a bit of Latin in his messages, but the message would essentially have still been the same. So should Labour grasp the nettle, rip off the plaster, or some other figure of speech that I can't currently think of, and bite the bullet. There you go. Bite the Brexit bullet. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
35 is the time. Don't get excited, by the way. It's a Conservative, it's a Remain voting Conservative peer writing in Rupert Murdoch's Times, who was saying that Labour should campaign in 28-29 to return to the single market, and quite rightly arguing that the political and economic case for doing so is overwhelming. But Keir Starmer hasn't got the memo. He did acknowledge the existence of an elephant in the room during his speech on Monday night, but he went nowhere near where you would want him to go if this proposal from Daniel Finkelstein were to be achieved.
I want to speak very frankly. The Brexit vote was a fair, democratic expression, and I will always respect that. But how it was sold and delivered was wrong. Wild promises were made to the British people and not fulfilled. We're still dealing with the consequences today in our economy and in trust, in the degradation of political debate. Now, I raise this not to rake up the past, but to learn from it and to use it to inform what comes next. The idea that leaving the EU was the answer to all our cares and concerns has clearly been proved wrong.
I think he's wrong. I don't think you can call it a fair and democratic vote and then go on in the same breath to describe the lies that were told, or the not just the unkept promises, but the unkeepable promises that we knew at the time could never be kept. But that maybe is a bit of a hair-splitting exercise. The question of whether or not they should go all in on it in the run-up to the next election, put clear blue water between themselves and whoever is in the box seat opposition-wise. At the moment, it looks like being Farage, although obviously growing questions about his racism, his anti-Semitism, as recalled by his many of his school friends, and indeed his protégés and close friend and party leader in Wales accepting bribes from a from a Kremlin stooge may yet derail that particular bandwagon. The question of whether Starmer should go all in on it is a fascinating one, and it's the one that we are asking today. Before we hear from, I think, a former campaign director of the Labour Party who has rung in, a little game for you. Which ardent Brexiteer, God, we used some stupid language, didn't we, during that fever dream immediately prior to and after 2016's vote. Which ardent Brexiteer has admitted that the historic vote to leave the EU should have required a supermajority of 60%. In other words, that margin was pitifully small and nowhere near enough of a mandate to visit such horrors upon the country. That's how I'd put it, not him. But which ardent Brexiteer now concedes that we should never have taken such a momentous decision based upon such a slim mandate? Was it A, hard man of Brexit Steve Baker, now to be found, indulging largely in fast catamaran racing? Was it B, can't think of anything funny enough to say as an epithet to describe Marc Francois. He's like a peanut in human form, isn't he, Marc Francois? Which may be a little unfair on peanuts. Or was it the haunted pencil himself, Jacob Rees-Mogg? So which former ardent Brexiteer has subsequently conceded that going ahead with the backing of only 52% of voters should not have been allowed? Was it A, hard man of Brexit Steve Baker? Was it B, peanut in human form, Marc Francois? Or was it C, haunted pencil? Or penny farthing made flesh, Jacob Rees-Mogg? Don't let me forget to tell you who. Alan is in Wandsworth. Alan, should they go here? Should they grasp this nettle?
Good morning, James.
Hello,
there's two answers to this question. Should Labour campaign to return to the EU? Yes, in my opinion, because it's the right thing for the country. However,
politics.
However, the only way Labour can ever do anything good in the world is if Labour's in power.
Yes.
In order for Labour to win power, they have to have 326 seats at a general election as a minimum. Preferably a few more would make their life a little easier. I have been wrestling with this question myself for the last 6 or 8 months with a couple of mates of mine who I used to work with. Is it in Labour's interest to campaign? I actually think that it's in the country's interest that there is a big campaign, well-funded campaign. You can think of the likes of the Tufton Street Gang on the one side of the fence. We don't really seem to have those same well-funded campaigns on our side of the fence, putting the argument so the voters can hear it. I don't think it's for Labour to do at the moment. I don't think it's in Labour's direct electoral interest. Again, that's not to say that come a general election, nearer a general election, Labour could be joining in with it. Right now, I don't think it's Labour's role to do. I don't think it's in Labour's interest to do. But I desperately want there to be.
Yeah, I like this because you're
putting the argument to make sure the public can hear it and have that debate.
Well, you're mapping the land, aren't you, between the practical and the theoretical? So in theory, of course, they flipping should, but in practice, would it actually go differently from last time, as it were? Would people be more persuaded by facts and therefore abandon their feelings? You haven't said the words, but I think you're thinking them. Red wall, aren't you? The constituencies.
Well, it could be. Again, I worry about the red wall approach because Farage has got his votes already, and no one, not even Bobby Jenrick, can out Farage, and Kemi Badenoch certainly can't, and Keir Starmer most definitely can't on those lines. So I don't think that we should be trying to out Farage. I start always with how many votes do we need in the ballot box to win? Where do those voters live? How do we get to 326, preferably many more than that? It's about power, and the Labour Party and lefty parties have never been very good at the power thing. The Tories understand it. They want power. They want power because they know they can do things when they have power. We like to do the right thing.
But what if, I mean, are you in danger of being stuck in the past? I mean, people can see the evidence of their eyes and ears now, and however hard the liars shout about the problems being caused by, I don't know, Gary Lineker or Rachel Reeves or Carol Vorderman or whatever nonsense they're coming out with now, they're going to be able eventually to put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4. And then whoever is first to say, well, let's undo this stupid thing, benefits enormously from it.
There's a problem with going first. I love the idea of going first. I've made a bit of a career of doing it.
Yes.
Because that's the way you make change happen. However, it's not always a great strategy. Going first is potentially problematic.
Yeah, he who wields the whatever never wears the crown, or the stalking horse never wins the race. But I mean, it's a bit different in essentially a sort of party system like ours, in a first-past-the-post system like ours. I think you might be right, but I'm going to cling, if I may, to the carcass of hope for a moment longer. Alan, thank you. Former Labour campaigns director, so he does know of what he speaks, and when he talks about former colleagues, it's people who have been like him in the room where it happens. But I would still suggest that the time is going to be right at some point, and when it is right, there'll still be an awful lot of people saying it isn't right. You won't know whether it's right or not until you've actually tried it. A very literary reference from Paul in Peckham, who provides a quote from A Man for All Seasons, in which Thomas Cromwell addresses Parliament and says, "There is among us a brood of discreet traitors, to which deceit the king can brook no longer, and we, his loyal huntsmen, must now drive these subtle foxes from their covert." And that is pretty much the editorial policy of the Daily Mail that would be resurrected and revivified in the event of Keir Starmer finally telling the truth that everybody knows, including an awful lot of people writing articles about betrayals, and they've got kids to feed, they've got school fees to pay, just like everybody else in their world, and just like me. But they will get paid for lying, and happily some of us have managed to end up in a position where we get paid for telling the truth. Robert is in Harrow. Robert, what do you reckon?
Hi, James. Thanks for having me on. Big fan of yours. Bought your book.
Quite right, too. Should be compulsory. I'll tell you what, if everybody read that, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in now, or if we were, we'd understand why. Carry on, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation that I've had with a number of friends, and we've said that he should have basically cleared the decks when he got elected. He should have said to the country, this is the damage what Brexit has done to our country.
Yeah.
And I think that, he failed to do that. I just think that he just didn't have the guts to do that, to be honest with the British people.
If you look at the stuff that they tried to pin on him, and particularly on the women in his cabinet, on Rayner, on Reeves, on Jess Phillips, the idea that he couldn't go there because of the response it would prompt from the psychos on the far right of the UK media looks a little bit daft now, doesn't it? Yeah.
We should have had a grown-up conversation about it, James. I've got neighbours around me that are first-generation immigrants that voted for Brexit. Yeah. And when I've asked them, how's Brexit working out? Oh, not very well.
Yeah. Are they ready to admit it was a mistake yet, or just to blame whoever they want to blame for implementing it badly? Because I know I use the line a lot, but that's because it's such a good line. There is a brilliant Brexit, it just goes to a different school.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my neighbour who she's quite elderly. She is elderly, and I take her shopping every fortnight. And, I drop it in the conversation, and she goes, no, it's not working out. It's not worked. It was the wrong decision. And this was a person that was a homeowner in Spain. And I thought to myself...
a lot of that about.
Yeah, I thought to myself, you did, Anyway, I didn't get into an argument about it.
No, you can't, and I think it is a bit pointless to do so. Yeah. But I wonder whether there would even be an argument, because apart from old Tony in Essex, I think everybody recognises the reality that they're living in now. It's just a question of how much of the responsibility for it you attribute to the ludicrous decision that was taken by a tiny majority of the electorate in 2016. Speaking of which, the former, quotes, ardent Brexiteer, end quotes, that has subsequently conceded that they should never have gone ahead with something as momentous as Brexit with a majority as small as the one that they had. He has argued that it should have required a super majority of 60%. Jacob Rees-Mogg once argued that it should have been 2 votes, one to sort of, measure twice, cut once kind of vote. But of course, as soon as they got the result that they wanted, they resigned from that position very quickly. So it wasn't Jacob Rees-Mogg, it wasn't the human peanut Mark Francois, who I think is still around. I'm going to vote for him to be the next leader of the Conservative Party because, comedy. It was, in fact, the hard man of Brexit, Steve Baker.
What do you want to do if you're not an MP?
Skydiving, motorcycling, fast catamaran sailing.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 10 to 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I kind of like the question of whether or not Labour should campaign on the Brexit question at the next election, because it admits so many different answers, many of which we've heard already. But there's room for more. I like the way that Alan just introduced the tension between what should be and what is. It's not a counterfactual. We can be fairly confident that the liars who sold it to the country are not ready to admit that they lied. The closest you're going to get is that headline from a former Tufton Street ghoul saying, we need to be honest about the economic impact. And then you've got people who still think there is a brilliant Brexit, but it goes to a different school. They're tragic figures. The idea that Nigel Farage would be able to deliver something it's superior to what we've currently got, that the leaders of Europe are going to go, oh yeah, well no, he's a different kettle of fish altogether. Let's be very amenable to whatever it is that this character's got to say. It's beyond funny, actually, because it's, of course, the national interest that is at stake when you even contemplate the idea of putting that character in charge. But equally, if power is the priority, getting back into power, staying in power is the priority come 2029. Campaigning beginning in 2028. Campaigning never really off the table. Just stop and think about that for a minute. Would it actually be a good idea? So I think so far you've told me what you want, but that isn't the same as telling me what Labour should do if they are prioritising power. For me, I think I disagree with Alan. I think I would say, what have you got to lose? Unless something extraordinary happens in the next couple of years, and it could, because, for example, immigration may no longer be a salient issue by the time of the next election. It'll be a shame in the context of the national interest, because we will be cutting off whatever is left of our nose after Brexit to spite whatever is left of our face by presiding over a plummeting net migration figure. But unless something extraordinary happens between now and the next election, Labour are probably on a hiding to nothing. So why not roll the dice? And I think the biggest dice of all is probably Brexit, single market. 10:52 is the time. Phil is in Exeter. Phil, what would you like to say?
Well, thank you, James. First of all, I'd like to say I think we should rejoin the customs union. I think we've got to differentiate that between the institutions in Europe at this time. I think that will come. I think we need a working relationship for business, for trade. I believe in free movement because all free movement has done is hindered me and lots of other people from travelling abroad, our children. I think there's rules that we never implemented because business wanted those workers coming into the country in a cheap way. So I think it can work. I think we need that relationship. Labour should do it. And things may change because we went from hero to zero in 12 months. Yeah,
as a country.
Well, the Labour Party...
Oh, as a party. When you say we, I didn't realise you were speaking about the party, because, of course, a lot of people won't see themselves... But you're right. I mean, Labour is coming from a starting position incredibly low, incredibly lower than anybody would have expected. So, but what about the downsides of actually... I mean, who are the voters that they're going to lose or alienate by pursuing this?
First of all, I'm off in a moment to meet some of my former friends, former bus drivers, good working class people, many of whom voted Brexit.
Of course.
The last thing I am going to tell them is they were wrong.
Yes, that's the problem.
I need to convince them there is a better way forward to get us out of this blooming mess that we've been in for the last 14 years without telling and pointing fingers they were wrong.
Well, can you do that, though? Can you tell them they're wrong without telling them they're wrong? I'm not telling you you're wrong, but we need to undo that thing that you did when you weren't wrong.
Yeah, well, they were misled.
Yes.
They were misled, and let's be honest, Jacobs Rees-Mogg and all those talking about sovereignty.
Yeah, I know.
What he was talking about, James, was his sovereignty. Look, working class people are always going to be pushed around, okay?
Yes.
Whether we're pushed around from Brussels or London, it's not really no difference. What Jacob Rees-Mogg and that class wanted, they wanted the right to push me around. And I don't go for it personally. So I think there's a good opportunity here. There's only one way for us to go. That's the Labour Party to go forward. And I think let's stop calling it customs union, rejoining the EU, talking about a proper trade relationship with our nearest partners.
A proper one.
Movement.
I mean, I'll read you. I've got two. I've only got two. I've tried quite hard to keep on top of my text. Tony, I've put in Idiot's Corner, obviously, and he might be a little bit lonely there, if he can count higher than one. But Luke, in Sevenoaks, I don't know if this deserves to go in there. Here you go. He says, Brexit is like a Rolls-Royce that's been left in the garage. Okay, it's been argued about but never actually driven. Here is, there is a brilliant Brexit, but it goes to a different school analogy.
It costs a lot to run, though, doesn't it, James?
But it's using. Hang on, let me read it. And when it was taken out, it was driven by people who didn't know how to drive. So of course it looked bad. The problem isn't the car; it's the driver. Let the country actually use Brexit properly before scrapping it. Looking forward to Reform UK getting in the driving seat, says Luke in Sevenoaks, who I think, and I'm happy to be proved wrong, would be categorically incapable of describing what on earth the tactics deployed in such circumstances would look like, or why on earth the European Union, in whose gift lie almost all elements of enhanced cooperation, would be more amenable to a clown like Farage than they would be to a character like Keir Starmer. But people like Luke exist. They walk among us.
They do. They do, and I meet them all the time. Now, I'm out on the doorstep quite regularly in Exeter.
Yes.
The point is, people want some hope. They don't want to keep revisiting. They don't want me pointing fingers at them. They don't want me or anybody telling them they're wrong. They want me to give them a bit of hope. And that's what I believe we should do, is to tell them that this can be better. If we keep revisiting Rolls-Royces or whatever, and I bet most of those parts of that Rolls-Royce was come from abroad, tell that, Luke. And so, we've got to really be clear on what we want to do as a country. We've got to get back. We've got to have a good trading. We've got to have free movement. Let our children go abroad. I'd like to go abroad a bit more if I could.
Little things that people might be more amenable to, whereas business, of course, would be looking at the big things. Thank you, Phil. A few people pointing out to our friend whose text I read out a moment ago that he lives in Kent, of course. He's in Sevenoaks, so he already knows what having Reform UK in power looks like. So, yeah, mate, you don't need to look forward to a general election to see them in the driving seat. You can see them in the driving seat now in Kent, keeping up to date with how many have left or been expelled or fallen out with each other. Or was it in Kent that they had to take down flags to put up Christmas lights, or they weren't going to be able to celebrate Christmas because they were too busy celebrating flags? And then, of course, you've got the other examples of coming to power on a promise to cut spending and then revealing that you were going to have to increase spending because you were too stupid to realise that spending had already been cut to the bone during the best part of a decade that was literally called austerity, but that was too complicated a word for the politicians in Kent to understand. So, mate, you know what power. You know what they're going to do with power. They're going to make things even worse than they were before, but hang on. Doff cap, tug forelock. On we go. Last word on this to David, who, appropriately enough, is in Paris, France, as opposed to Texas. David, what would you like to say?
James, no, he shouldn't do. He shouldn't do what he's now proposing. The point is that, and he was quite wrong to say that the people had spoken in his in the recording you just issued. I mean, 37% over 35 is not people. When 1/3, 27% didn't vote.
Yes.
What he should be doing is to say. And he should have put this in his manifesto before the last election. He should have said Brexit was a disaster. It was a mistake, and it should be overturned. But I'm not proposing to do so until the respectable majority of the people of this country recognise that it was a mistake. Because
so ruling it out was silly. What he should have said was if the clamour becomes irresistible, If support for the idea becomes irresistible, then of course I will do what the British people want. Whereas he did the opposite of that. And he said, regardless of how unpopular it has become, I will never, ever go into reverse. Very odd politics, that. Very odd position to adopt.
Yes. But anyhow, I mean, at 2%, the people haven't spoken. Fundamental
That's
problem
true.
is the fundamental problem, James, is not so much that. It is the way that the British, the lack of a constitution, the lack of any rules about how referendum are conducted and how they are implemented. These are the basic problems. It should never have happened in 2016.
That ship has sailed, hasn't it? David Cameron just sort of insouciantly waltzing off into the sunset, having lobbed several hand grenades over his shoulder as he walked away. But unfortunately, they've gone off now, and the business of repairing the damage done falls to who follows. And at the moment, Keir Starmer is the one in the box seat. David, lovely stuff, really lovely. And of course, the political difficulties cited by other callers are assuaged almost entirely by that yes soon but not now kind of promise, which keeps people who are adamant that it has to happen relatively happier or happier than they are now, without necessarily alienating the people who are sending me incomprehensible messages about Rolls Royces or calling me James No Brain, because of course their votes are worth exactly the same as the votes of intelligent people who know what they're talking about. And there, in a nutshell, is how Brexit happened. It's 11 o'clock.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 4 minutes after 11. It's Wednesday. I hope that doesn't come as a major surprise to you. You're listening to James No Brain on LBC. PMQs on the way at 12, which, of course, offers you an opportunity to, I don't know what anymore with PMQs. I mean, it's hard to imagine anybody being a passionate supporter at this point in the political cycle of either of them. Various right-wing newspapers obviously charged with pretending that Kemi Badenoch is doing a half-decent job, but she's unhinged. Speaking of unhinged, I don't actually have any unhinged headlines for you today, but I've got, count them, 3 woke watches, 3 missed informations, 1 featuring Kemi Badenoch, and I've got a missing word round as well. I've got what's the missing headline round? Although I need that headline. I haven't actually got it in front of me. You're never going to guess it in a million years. It's an absolute cracker. A humdinger, indeed, of a headline. But 3 woke watches. They're like buses, aren't they? How long is it since we had a woke watch? How long is it since we had more than one on the programme? I've got 3. Admittedly, one of them doesn't actually contain the word woke, but it might as well do. It contains the phrase virtue signalling, which is exactly the same. No more clues. I will be revealing at least... I think I'll do all 3 at the... Shall I do all 3 in one go? Like a kind of woke watch festival, a festival of woke watch, a hat trick of woke watch, or shall I do them separately? You let me know. But you're absolutely right, James. I'm not talking to myself now. I'm talking to somebody called James who's texted me to say, you are really treating us today, James. You're not wrong. Unlike the ambassador in a Ferrero Rocher advert, I am spoiling you. So don't let me forget those. They're very good. I love the topics that... I don't know why, I just got a mental image of a chocolate bar then. Do you remember? Do topics still exist? Did I ever tell you about the role that a topic played? Quite an emotional role that a topic played in my life about, I'm older man now, about 30 years ago, just over 30 years ago. It's actually an incredible story. I'm just going to see if I've ever told it to you before. Does anybody know the story about a topic and refugees? There you go, there's a clue that you may have heard. I don't think I've ever told you that before because I'd completely forgotten it then until the word topic prompted a mental image of a topic chocolate bar in my head. If you've not heard that, if you've heard that before, tell me. If you haven't, don't tell me. Don't waste my inbox. Tell me if you have heard the story of the topic chocolate bar and the refugee before, from about 30 years ago in my own personal life. I like the things that we would file under checkups. So we did AI, didn't we, on Monday? And oddly, the day after we did it, somebody very, very high up in AI said something that we said. I'm not suggesting for a minute that we said it first. It was fairly obvious, but it occurred to me that the legislation is going to demand that we put the brakes on the technology. So it will become the role of governments. And in the current climate, both political and technological, this is quite a terrifying thought because I'd say it was probably less likely to implement that at any previous point in human history. But governments are going to have to tell tech companies that they are not allowed to do things that the technology is now capable of. It's not so much a case of putting the genie back in the bottle as not letting the genie out of the bottle in the first place, even though we know that the genie exists and what the genie could do. Are there any precedents for that, apart from perhaps the nuclear bomb? But of course that was used, albeit only twice, the atomic bomb. What is like, because it was a very, very senior AI person who I read yesterday saying governments are going to have to limit the remit of AI. Otherwise, you've got these terrifying prospects that we've touched on in the past. But AI is the best example in recent years of a story that we don't need to wait for the news to tell us to return to. Every now and then we can just tune in to check out how things are developing, because it's from a standing start. During our time together, most of the things that we talk about existed before we met and will continue to exist after we've met. But there's something a little bit special about the subjects that didn't exist when we met and came into existence after we met, so that we are chronicling them together and discussing them together, arguing about them together sometimes, or informing each other about them from a standing start. I don't know why I find those subjects so compelling and engaging compared to some of the others that we discuss very regularly, but I really do. And oddly, because at first glance they don't have a great deal in common, the other one is the fat jabs, or whatever you prefer to call them, the weight loss injections. They kind of came into existence relatively recently. We discussed them at the time with people who were among the very first cohort who benefit from them. We were discussing with people in the front line of weight loss injections, what it was doing and what it was likely to do. And as each month and indeed now year has passed, the story has changed. The shape of the story has changed. So in that sense, and possibly that sense only, it's an identical topic to AI. We're here on the very ground floor, and we don't know how many floors the building has got, but every now and then the lift doors open and we're visiting a new higher floor. We'll never go down in this elevator. We will always be doing more and learning more about what AI is capable of and how weight loss injections are affecting our species, are affecting humanity. And they are back in the news today, but as I say, they wouldn't really need to be. They're not massive stories. One shows us that snack sales are growing as appetites shrink. So in the annual food and drink report, 57% of customers revealed that they were replacing full meals with snacks, a shift that has been linked to appetite-reducing drugs such as Ozempic, Wegovy and Mounjaro. It's not going to be only that, of course it's not, but weight loss injections having impacts on our habits, on our lives. And the other story that perhaps is rather more newsworthy sees the head of the World Health Organization urging countries to make more Mounjaro or Wegovy or Ozempic, to make more and to make these drugs more accessible to people and indeed to lower the prices. They recognise the huge potential that these drugs have in tackling soaring obesity globally, but they are currently available only to 1 in 10 of those who need them. And need is a fascinating word as well, because one of the things we discovered last time the elevator doors opened and we found ourselves visiting a floor we hadn't visited before, one of the things we discovered was that an awful lot of people were, to an extent, gaming the system because they wanted the drug but did not need it. So it's fairly straightforward to get hold of it, even if your medical need is not clear or acute. You can just finesse the process and pay privately to get a drug that now is suffering from shortages. And crucial to that, among perhaps the people who need them as opposed to the people who want them, is the fact that when you stop taking it, either through choice or necessity, and necessity may be linked either to availability or cost if you're doing it privately, then your weight will go up again. Listen, it is about as close to a miracle drug as we have discovered in our lifetimes, because, of course, not only does it speak to the desire to be slimmer, which can be born of, which is more often born of health concerns than vanity, but it also, by dint of delivering less weight, it also reduces comorbidities. So all of the conditions associated with obesity, from heart problems, blood pressure, diabetes, the list is really, really long, and the evidence is irresistible that if you can get the weight off, your likelihood of succumbing to these conditions, and therefore costing the NHS, aka the taxpayer, a lot more than you would do otherwise, is an unalloyed good. But obviously, it is not just, I'll give you the list actually: heart attacks, strokes, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, bad cholesterol, sleep apnea, and kidney and arterial disease. Imagine what happens to the NHS if you measurably and massively reduce the incidences of all of those things. But that's not what we talk about, really. We talk very much about the individual impact, which can include those things. It can include the health improvements that you have enjoyed as a consequence of taking it. But I want to steer you back now to a question I've asked before, albeit we're going to answer it on a different floor of the building. So ding, 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 the elevator doors are opening. And I want to steer you back now, particularly with that information about people generally putting the weight or much of the weight back on when they stop taking it. It makes me think of two things. Weight loss drugs have an important role to play, but they are not a silver bullet, says the executive director of the Obesity Health Alliance. In the UK right now, she adds, access is still limited, supply is fragile, and NHS use is tightly targeted. These powerful medicines can help individuals with chronic obesity, but they are not suitable for everyone and must be accompanied by comprehensive support to be used safely and effectively. Evidence shows that most people regain weight once they stop taking these drugs, and we cannot medicate 2/3 of the population indefinitely. 2/3 of the population. And the idea is that either you change your habits or you take the drug forever. Which kind of leads me back to my favourite question with regards to weight loss drugs, which is whether or not we are losing something very precious by making it too easy in the first place to lose weight. I've shed a bit of lumber lately, but I am not on a weight loss drug. I've shed a little bit of lumber lately by playing tennis 2 or 3 times a week, making some modest changes to my diet, eating less meat, and pursuing, pretty much the first time in my life, a non-journalist approach to alcohol, which actually I've found surprisingly pleasant and easy. But those 3 factors, drinking much less booze, eating much less junk food, and playing much more tennis, have seen me have to go to Timpson's last week and ask the man to put a new hole in my belt, to punch a new hole in the belt that I wear. I'm not buying a new belt, get lost. So, I'm not setting myself up as a counterbalance to somebody with type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high risk of heart attack or stroke, bad cholesterol, kidney disease, or anything like that. But I am wondering whether the news that you'll put the weight back on when you stop taking the pill, and you can't take the pill forever. Of course, you can argue that you can take the pill forever, but if we work on the proviso that we don't really want people taking the pill forever, doesn't that combination of circumstance lead us back into the territory of wondering whether or not it is necessarily an unalloyed good thing? I have never taken it, so in many ways my opinion is useless. It's only really pertinent to this conversation insofar as I've done what is supposed to be the more difficult thing to do, which is to eat less and exercise more. And I am enjoying the benefits. But that doesn't really qualify me to cast aspersions on the actual weight loss injections. To be able to provide an account of whether they are quite as good as we initially wondered, you have to have been there, don't you? You have to have done it. So let's do it. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. The suggestion is that people are not changing their lifestyle enough to continue to benefit from the health impacts of a weight loss injection when they stop taking the weight loss injection. We've known all along that even if you are taking it, you're supposed to eat more healthily, exercise more, and even have counselling about your lifestyle. Most of the people buying it privately after perhaps sending exaggerated accounts of their own BMI to an online doctor, most of those people are not necessarily going to be under any pressure or requirement whatsoever to eat more healthily, exercise more, or indeed receive counselling about their lifestyles. So let's just do a little bit of a temperature take, okay? What sort of support is available, whether you're doing it on the NHS or not? If you're getting it sent in the post every week, you might have great intentions when you start, but the weight starts coming off. You think, well, I don't really need to. I'm just eating less because my appetite's gone. What happens when you stop taking it? Is it back to square one? Is it actually going to be another yo-yo, which people whose mothers were dieting throughout the 1970s and 80s will be very familiar with? 0345 6060 973. I'm just going to put my little hat on and my uniform. I'm going to press the button on the new floor that we are visiting in the weight loss injections building, and we're going to find out what we discover on that floor. So we've been in it for a while now. You've been doing it for a long time. We've been chronicling this phenomenon for long enough to know what happens when you stop taking it, which wasn't the case last time we discussed it. Do we need a little bit of an update? Do we need to know a little bit more about it? Do we need to question whether or not the miracle cure, magic bullet description will be inaccurate? Hit the numbers now. You will get through.
James O'Brien on LBC.
20 minutes after 11 is the time. The WHO has warned about a shortage of weight loss injections, and other experts have warned that if you don't make the changes that you need to make in terms of lifestyle and behaviour, then when you stop taking the drugs, the weight will come back on, which just makes me wonder whether that they are camouflaging bigger problems, and that if you eat more healthily, exercise more, and have counselling, crucially, get the help and the support that you need to address what are often quite deep-rooted psychological issues, the drug might be a bit of a false dawn, is how I would describe it. But hey, I don't want it to be. I love the idea of magic bullets or miracle drugs, or even, borderline partial magic bullets. Because it's obviously not a magic bullet. You can't go out and live on ice cream and Burgundy and take this drug. I mean, that's what we kind of thought we might be getting when we watched Tomorrow's World as kids, that you'd be able to go out and live on pork scratchings and special brew, and then take a tablet every night and wake up looking like David Gandy. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But you could certainly describe it as having elements of a magic bullet if it allows you to do something that you've never been able to do before by dint of changing your body chemistry. Let's go to Brixham in Devon. Kevin is there. Kevin, what made you pick up the phone?
Well, you've talked about this before, James, and you just sort of summed it up. If you've got, look, I'm not a psychologist, but if you've got an eating disorder, you've got a major problem. But
yeah.
3 of us have taken it in our family, and all 3 of us were what I wouldn't describe as unfit. But for myself, I suddenly found myself after maybe 2 or 3 years going from 14.5 stone to 17.5 stone,
right?
And not being able to. Whereas I've always thought myself as fit, not able to do things. My daughter took it. She'd never done anything, any physical exercise at all. She's lost 3 to 4 stone. She's out running. She stopped taking it. Now, all 3 of us stopped taking it. My wife, myself, and my daughter stopped taking it. And what it's done for us is it's that thing about being able to change your habits. It's easy to say, very difficult to do, and to lose weight. Especially, I'm 60. It doesn't fall off easily.
No.
And what it did for me is it just gave me a massive boost to just see the weight coming off. It does make you eat less. And yes, if you go back to the way you were before and don't exercise, but I'm not eating the same as when I was on the drug. I'm eating fairly normally. I'm not killing myself if I have a biscuit. But I can walk up the hill now. I can go out.
And you are doing, crucially, but crucially you are doing. So you don't just sit on the sofa watching the weight come off.
No, I mean I think that's a fairly obvious thing, isn't it? If you're gonna take it and then go back to eating 3 pounds of ice cream for breakfast, then you're going to probably put the weight back on. But I've got a friend in Plymouth whose wife was seriously overweight.
Yeah,
never did any exercise. I mean, I am a bit of an evangelist for it, for getting some. And she's taken it, and she started seeing the weight coming off, and it gave her. So you talked about psychology. it gave her the psychological boost to think, I can actually lose weight, whereas before she just couldn't.
So no downsides then for you. And can I ask about your daughter? Did she start exercising even though she'd never done it before? Because I sense...
Absolutely.
Really? Why?
Because she just found she lost a lot of weight, and she suddenly found she could go for a run.
It's chicken and egg then. So the weight had sort of crept up on her, so to speak, and therefore at the age at which she might have started thinking I should be exercising because I'm no longer playing in the garden or riding my bike. Or I know I'm sounding, but and now I'm not going to do that because I'm either conscious of my weight or I'm unable to exercise in any meaningful way because of my weight. The weight comes down, the desire to exercise grows, and the reality changes. So she now
absolutely.
Well, this is a paean. You're right. This is evangelical. You are selling it, and of course you make it sound a little bit easy. Some people.
It doesn't suit everyone. My friend, one of my friends took it. It completely bunged him up. After 2 weeks, that was it. He stopped. It just didn't work for him. So
I've got a friend. I've got a friend who very open about it, very honest about it. Because I've got a couple of friends and acquaintances who I think have done it, but who I don't know that I'd sort of put any pressure on them to spill the beans, as it were. But one of my mates has done it, absolutely open about it from the start, and he looks sensational. He looks absolutely brilliant. But he said something that surprised me. He said it's not just the food and the drink, because he's in this line of work, so or at least in this business, so the lunches can still be pretty spectacular. Very, very easy when he was on it just to say no to a pudding or to only have one glass of wine with his lunch. But he said the thing that had really surprised him was that he had an exercise bike in the spare room for the best part of a decade. He hadn't really got on it after the original January determination 7 or 8 years ago. And he said, I was actually thinking I'm going to get back on the exercise bike. I wanted to get back on the exercise bike, and he did do. He got back on the exercise bike, and he's still doing it. What's that about? Is that?
Well, no, I mean, I've had the Guilty Gym membership for about 10 years.
That's the one. Yes, that's the one.
And now suddenly I'm in the place. I mean, I was even finding myself in the place at 4:30 in the morning. Let's not ask why that was.
Good God.
I'm using it. And again, whereas before, I am a bit of an evaluation. I do see the downsides to it.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'd want stories like yours. So what we're talking, this is something that isn't immediately obvious to everybody, which is that the healthier you are, the more enjoyable and accessible exercise becomes.
Exactly.
I'd never actually thought of that. I mean, and oddly, I should have done it. It's only a little thing, but playing tennis 2 or 3 times a week, as you get a little bit faster or a little bit lighter on your feet around the court, a little bit better, you enjoy it a lot more. You win more points, which is probably the best test of all. It's funny. That's lovely. Thank you, Kevin. A whole family. And not on it now. That's the point. So you use it to get over a hump, so to speak, both metaphorically and actually, depending on your body shape. So you use it to get over a hump. When you're on the other side of a hump, it's easier to do the things that you found almost impossible to do before you got over the hump. I really like that analysis. Alex is in Baschurch in Shropshire. Alex, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
Thanks for taking my call.
You're very welcome.
Bit of background on me. I'm ex-military, and I left the military in 2012.
Right.
Coming out of the military, I slowly put weight on because I wasn't exercising as much as I didn't need to. And then when would it be? 2022, I was diagnosed with heart failure. So I couldn't exercise at all without becoming incredibly breathless. I couldn't walk. At my worst, I couldn't walk to hang the washing out without getting breathless.
Good Lord.
So trying to get rid of the weight that I'd managed to get was quite difficult. And I reached 100 kilos, and I decided that was
What's
enough.
that in old money?
I've got no idea.
Okay.
I think it's about 16, 17 stone.
Okay.
I don't know, but I was certainly in the obese area on the BMI.
Right.
I think it's more than that actually. So I really don't know. I'm
Well, you're very rare. Is that because you were in the military? Do you think? Or I mean, most people.
I just like the units are better and easier for me to work.
You were about 16. You were about 16 stone, just under 16 stone.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I had a waist of around about 38 to 40 inches, depending upon which set of jeans that I was wearing.
Yeah.
Wearing XXL size tops.
I'm a 33 in Carhartt. I'm a 33 in Carhartt at the moment.
show off.
I know. I can't believe. I think Carhartt must come up big. Also, I'm 53. I've got no business wearing Carhartt. I fully accept that, but they must come up big because I'm 33 in Carhartt. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to boast. Carry on, Alex.
So I hit 100, and I decided to try and do something about it. And I was one of those who had an old cross trainer in the garage, and I started to work on that, but it was just pointless because I would get so out of breath.
Yes.
After 15 minutes, it was just pointless.
And also very dispiriting, quite depressing to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was getting into a bit of a cycle of depression. I've suffered from depression in the past as well.
Sorry.
So it was quite, quite miserable.
Yes.
And I felt quite miserable.
You felt
looking
stuck.
At myself.
You felt stuck.
Enjoy. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't enjoy doing anything. I didn't go anywhere other than for work.
Right.
I felt quite self-conscious. So I started on Manjaro on the 10th of March at 100 kilos.
Yeah.
And by the 22nd of August, I was down to 80 kilograms.
Oh,
so
well
I'd
done.
lost 20 kilos, which is a fair bit of weight.
Isn't it just?
And I'd gone down in jean sizes and jumper sizes and all that sort of stuff. And I'd suffered from some of the side effects of the drug.
Right.
Mainly nausea, a bit of diarrhea.
Okay.
Lots of wind, burping and belching and all that sort of stuff. Not really very pleasant stuff. And to be honest, I was so close to my goal anyway, which was 78 kilos, that I just went, I've had enough of this now.
Yeah.
It's time
well, you're down to
12
and a half stone in old money, so, you're as near as damn it to 78 kilos.
Yeah, and I'd come out of the obese, and I was still just in the overweight side.
And you could do the cross-trainer, could you? You could do exercise now.
Yeah, I could. I actually stopped cross-training because I enjoyed walking the dog, so I'd gone up from walking the dog basically around the block to 2.5 miles a day walking the dog.
How does the dog feel about this?
Oh, she loves it. She's running around like an idiot.
Good.
Jumping through puddles, so that's a pain. So I stopped in August, and I have noticed a slow increase in weight.
Okay.
And I'm back up to 83.
Okay.
Which is, in my mind, in the time from then to now, is not bad.
No, it's not bad unless the gradient continues, I suppose.
Well, that is a serious thing for me, and I have got the food noise back.
Just tell people what you mean by food noise, because I think I know, but some people listening won't.
It's basically, what's the easiest way of describing it?
Have a biscuit.
Yes.
That's it. Have a biscuit. Go on, just have a biscuit. Won't do you any harm. Have a biscuit.
A packet of Pringles.
Yeah.
And going, I could just eat those.
Yeah.
Or going into the cupboard and going, there's a full pack of popcorn there. And popcorn's been one of my snacks that I've gone to instead of chocolate and crisps.
Yeah, for sure.
But
when you're on the jabs, you don't hear the voice. You don't hear the voice saying, "Go and have a biscuit." It's that simple. It's that simple. Not hearing it. The biscuits are there. The biscuits are there, but the voice isn't.
The chocolate's still in the cupboard.
Yeah.
From my wife and daughter still have the chocolates, and it's still all in the cupboard. But I've not touched them. I've not touched the damn stuff. So it has given me lessons, and I've learned the lessons that I don't need it and I don't want it, and I don't have crisps now, and I don't have chocolate now.
But you're still going to need self-discipline. It's not going to take away the need for a bit of self-discipline. But it's going to be easier to achieve the self-discipline at 82 kilos than it would have been at 100 kilos.
And the overall impact upon my health is such that I can now walk so far with the dog. I go to a lot of concerts and I dance around like an idiot at concerts and gigs and stuff.
That's lovely. What was the last gig? I'm late. I've got to go to the news. But before that, what was the last gig you went to?
Lord in Birmingham.
Oh, how lovely. Oh, now that's such a little thing, but that will have resonated with people. All different points of your story will have resonated with different people in different ways. There'll be people thinking, I'd love to go to concerts again, but I'm a bit embarrassed or I can't dance. And then just, get 20 kilos off with a little bit of help, keep it off with discipline and a few changes, and you could be back boogieing away with Alex. It's 11:33. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:36 and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Should we do the woke watches or should we I'd take a couple of calls first and maybe end up with the woke watches, but I don't want time to run away with us. PMQs on the way at 12. Natasha will be here shortly to make uncannily accurate predictions about what is likely to come up when Kemi Badenoch gets to her feet. And then I have to tell you that I don't know if you were here a few weeks ago when young Henry, the work experience boy, was charged with introducing, I can't call him that anymore, he's a veteran presenter now on LBC, Henry Riley, who is a master of many crafts now in the world of radio, but I didn't think this was going to be a thing. I was joking, and he was joking, and you knew we were joking, when he found an erotic novel that had been written by a Reform UK politician, and we laughed at it. And I suggested this could be the beginning of a series in which we examine erotic fiction written by Reform UK politicians. And I was joking. But I don't know whether you've noticed that Henry is one of those people possessed of an extraordinary work ethic. Either that or he's just desperate to get himself on the radio, like a kind of radio Alan Partridge. Let me on the radio, let me on the radio. So he came up to me yesterday and said that he's got another episode of erotic fiction written by Reform UK politicians. I said, surely not. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. He said, not only, James, do I have another episode of erotic fiction written by Reform UK politicians, he said, I think I've got one for next week as well. So this series could run to at least 3 episodes. Erotic fiction written by Reform UK politicians. So do not, whatever you do, miss that. I also would like to tell you or help you find out a little more about something that all of the people inviting Robert Jenrick to spew his bilge all over the airwaves are unlikely to bring to your attention as he attacks the decision to remove jury trials from a relatively small number of defendants. You may be interested to know that he is being blamed for a campaign of hate and threats of violence against immigration judges, being blamed personally. Members of the judiciary being forced to flee their homes following Honest Bob Jenrick's threats to remove, quotes, activist judges, end quotes. We'll find out a little bit more of that after PMQs, because again, I'm afraid it's one of those things that gets filed under things that other people aren't going to tell you. Would you like to hear something else that gets filed under things other people aren't going to tell you? Yeah, what did the OBR have to say about claims that Rachel Reeves had misled anybody during their evidence to the Commons Select Committee yesterday? I'll play you the footage shortly so that you can be under no illusions whatsoever. But before all of that, back to the jabs. David is in Edinburgh. It's pretty much all good so far, David. Are you going to be a fly in the ointment, or are you going to add to the general sense of wonderfulness?
I think I'll probably add to the sense of wonderfulness.
Carry on.
I think to begin with, I need to tell you that I am a Reform voter, but please don't hold that against me.
Not in a million years, David. You'll come to your senses eventually. If only there was a jab for that, eh?
Well, I'll very quickly tell you my story. I've been off Manjaro now for about 6 months, and I suppose it started about a year ago when my wife told me that I had the figure of SpongeBob SquarePants.
That's a bit rude.
If you can get the vision, all yellow, square, no hips. So
quite pearish. Is it a bit pear-shaped, or is it just square?
Yeah. And she was complaining that I was going to have to start wearing a bras. So I did have to think seriously about doing something. So I was 20 stone, and within 6 months of Manjaro, I went down to 15 stone. And it was absolutely transformational. I got to the stage where I couldn't do my shoelace without my face turning red. The blood pressure was through the roof, and everything wobbled. Anyway, moved forward 6 months.
Yes.
I'd lost 5 stone. I'd gone from a 48 chest to a 42 test.
Wow.
42-inch test. My whole wardrobe had changed.
That's
and I
big. So you're down to about a 36-inch waist then as well.
Absolutely, but the biggest thing for me was work. When I used to go to work, and I used to wear just kind of stuff that hid my figure. It was all jumpers and stuff.
Yes.
And, really bland things and the same clothes all the time. But going to work, I was able to buy new clothes, new suits, new shirts. And it kind of changes your career because people look at you slightly different.
And now you've left you've left your wife and run off with your secretary.
No, God, no. I've been married 3 times. I'm not thinking of spending that kind of money again. So
I'm
at
joking.
work, it's transformational.
Oh, that's lovely.
I can go to work now, nice and smart. I feel on top of the world. And the biggest tip I would ever say for people coming off Manjaro is just drink water. What a lot of people do is rather than people aren't hungry, people are thirsty. So rather than going for the Mars bar or the packet of crisps, just take half a glass of water. And for me, that was transformational.
That's true, actually, regardless of what your relationship is with weight loss injections, whether you're having them or not. Quite often when you think you're hungry, you're just thirsty. Or when you think you're craving a glass of wine, you're actually you're craving a glass of water. I mean, neither of us are medics, but it works for you and it works for me as well. Quite often you just, it's why I drink gallons of tea in the studio. It just kind of quench that thirst, and a lot of the other thirsts and appetites disappear. I just before you go, you mentioned your voting intentions, so I'm going to have a little bit of fun at your expense, David, if that's all right. So you must be delighted about welcoming this fella into the fold.
Well, I'll give you an exclusive, Joe, because I've been told through certain members of the lobby that my name is one of these 9 being floated around by Reform UK. Absolutely not a cat's hand and chance will I be defecting.
He's just defected, and he's defected to the party led by this bloke.
50 years of the Conservatives promising to do one thing and then doing the complete opposite. My message to you is clear, plain and simple. Never trust a Tory. Did you get that? I'll repeat it. Never trust a Tory. They will always let you down. They will always betray you. Reform UK are the real deal.
FT reporting this morning that he's telling donors that he's up for a merger with the Tories, David. But that hasn't moved your needle one jot, has it?
Let me tell you where I am with this. The problem I've got with the Labour Party is I don't believe a word they say. They'll go on breakfast TV and Rachel Reeves can speak for half an hour, and I just don't trust what's coming out of her mouth.
But you trust the bloke there who's telling you never to trust the Tory, and indeed the bloke who's just joined your party who said he never would in a million years.
I want change, but I don't want Labour. I don't want Conservative.
But you're voting for the bloke who told you Brexit would make us better off.
Well, it's got another 3 or 4 years to get his act together, and you never know.
Brexit's not going to make you better off if we waited 300 years, mate.
In 3 years, I might have come to my senses, but right now,
there we go.
I don't.
Well, keep listening. Keep listening, David, and let me know when you have. All right, but you'll always be welcome for a chat, not just about weight loss, jabs, but also about the politics. It is coming up to 11:45. I mean, there it is. Every single caller is describing. And dare I suggest that as he leads a happier and more fulfilled life, his politics might change as well. But every caller is describing much, much more than changes to the waistline or changes to the physical health, changes to mental health, embracing the idea of going shopping for a suit. You know, I'm a sucker for menswear. It's what I would have done if I hadn't finally managed to persuade someone to give me a break in journalism. But the pleasure of doing that, it's a wonderful thing to hear. It's a wonderful thing to hear. 11:45 is the time.
James O'Brien on LBC.
48 is the time. I don't think I've ever told you the topic story on the radio. That's extraordinary, because normally whatever stories I drag up from the distant past of my own pathetic existence, I then reiterate and recycle for you ad infinitum. How many people could tell you themselves the story of the boy who said, "What was it like?" Or sundry other anecdotes that I've shared with you. The way my dad greeted me when I got off the bus at Digbeth coach station wearing brand new jeans that already had holes in them. Various other little moments that I like to think crystallise something bigger than the actual moment. But I've never told you the story of the topic, so I will tell you that today. But we have other stuff to deal with first. In fact, we have a rather wonderful missed information for you.
Missed information.
Thank you, Emily. The Daily Mail reports today that the watchdog has bitten back. Days after its chairman was forced to quit over budget shambles, OBR turned screw on Reeves to set the record straight, which I have to say I did something of a double take on when I saw it in the newspaper this morning. Remember, I leaf through this organ so that you don't have to, because the headlines on more responsible stories read a little bit like this. Reeves' speech did not mislead on challenges facing UK ahead of budget, says OBR official. The FT reported similarly, and it made me go back to the original copy. It's comments made yesterday by Professor David Miles from the Office for Budget Responsibility, very categorically stating that Rachel Reeves's comments ahead of announcing her tax and spending plans were, quote, not inconsistent with the situation she faced. So I was just reflecting back on all the people who've been calling her a liar all week, some of whom have now moved on to being very, very exercised about her schoolgirl chess exploits. But if you're going to accuse, and then you hear from David a moment ago, convinced that he can't trust her or that she lies, because that's what people keep telling him. She's a liar, she's a liar, she's a liar. So given that it was the OBR who were being posited as the people calling her a liar, you'd think they'd be very keen to actually report the words of Professor David Miles addressing precisely that point. So I read the entire Daily Mail article, and then I read the comment article on page 16, and not once did this little quote from the actual evidence he gave to the actual committee in the actual exchange that they've decided to describe as him attacking her, not once did they quote this.
I don't think it was misleading for the, if I may, my own view, I don't think it was misleading for the Chancellor to say that the fiscal position was very challenging at the beginning of that week.
Oh yeah, but I bet he had things to say about that 4-point-something billion that was a surplus, and that proves that she's absolutely a liar.
I think the 4.2 billion number, a positive number, so that the central guess as to where the margin would be 4 years down the road was by a tiny margin, just the right side of zero, was actually not a number, at the risk of repeating myself, was not a number that we in the OBR in any way wanted to be interpreted as this is very, very good news, there is no hole to fill, as people were saying.
Do you think it was sufficiently bad news to justify the way it was presented on the 4th of November?
Well, I think it posed a significant fiscal challenge to a government that wanted to increase the headroom, and I think it was pretty clear.
That wasn't the justification given on that occasion, was it?
Well, I can't remember the Chancellor's words. I think
she didn't talk about headroom, did she?
Well, I think the message was more, but the Chancellor will speak for herself, of course. I thought the message was more, this is a very challenging fiscal position, and all I am saying is that a number that was plus 4 billion in the pre-measures forecast is not inconsistent with the statement, the sentiment that this is a very challenging fiscal position.
It's kind of what I told you on Monday while everybody else was shouting liar at the woman. Hey, listen, I don't think she's going to go down in history as one of the finest chancellors we've ever had. She may indeed go down as one of the worst. Time will tell. But it's very important, if you accuse someone of being a liar, to then go back to the organisation that you think proves that that lies are being told and find out whether or not they agree with your analysis, which the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, sundry other people have categorically not done. So there it is, a rather splendid example of
missed information.
Thank you, Emily. But not just, of course, highlighting what you're not being told, highlighting the absolute failure to untell you the things that that you were told earlier in the week. I've got another one for you as well, actually, but I'm conscious of the time, and I know a lot of people are waiting to talk about Monjaro. Andrew's in Rugby. Andrew, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Lovely to speak to you.
Likewise.
I've been a fan for 4 years, first-time caller, so be gentle.
Of course I will. Thank you and welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, sir. I went on Monjaro. Basically, I caught COVID in 2022.
Right.
Scarred all my lungs. I'm an old-school rugby player, so...
I knew you were. I don't know. Anyway, no, I'm not going to indulge in any stereotypes, but you're calling me from rugby, and as soon as you started talking, I thought, prop forward.
Yeah, definitely loose head number one.
Incredible! That's just insane. Anyway, carry on.
Perfect. So, after catching COVID, scarred my lungs. I've never smoked or nothing, so always been healthy with the lungs like a drink. And I put on 4 stone, so I went up to 26 stone. And I'm not going to be embarrassed with that. This is where I was. And then a couple of things happened in the family, but moving on a couple of years,
yes,
I went up to 28 stone this time last year. So I went on Slimming World, and I lost 2 stone going back and forth, the typical yo-yo diet.
Yes.
then I went to my doctor. Obviously, my BMI was 47%, and he said, unfortunately, because I'm not diabetic and no real health issues, that you're going to have to go on a waiting list, which was about 6 months. So I decided to purchase the Monjaro myself.
Yes.
I was eating a lot of takeaways, to be fair, so we started off on about £129 a month, which was 40 quid a week, so I'd save on food, and I dropped 3 stone. Went back to the GP because it was working really well, my confidence was good, and my mindset was really good. And again, I went on the waiting list again, so I felt like I was screaming for a bit of help, and weren't getting nothing. And then one thing led to another. I couldn't afford it, and I put the weight back on up to 28 stone.
That's
so
brutal.
I live on my own as well, so that I got really good friends around me. I play a lot of golf. I must be the heaviest golfer in the world at 28 stone. But what happened then? I bought a golf buggy, so you tend to get in a bit of a shell. You lose a bit of confidence. Yeah. I bought a golf buggy, so I stopped walking, and I'd finish golf, I'd go home or have a couple of beers, that was it. Then I had a beautiful grandson.
Okay.
And I started playing about with him. I was out of breath. And I got a lot of friends, James. I've been up in rugby for about 25 years, and, you know, they were wearing nice golf clothes. I couldn't fit into them, and, you know, I could tell they were concerned about it, but there was only 2 or 3 lads actually said, my nickname is Taffy, so
sure.
Taffy, come on, you need to lose a bit of weight, but, you know, your health, we're all worried about you. And, yeah, fair play to him. And 3 months ago, I went on a YOV. The company I go through is, they advised to go on a cheaper drug, and 3.5 months later, and I've lost 3 stone.
So it's all moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I've lost 3.5 stone. I've sold the golf buggy now, and I'm walking the golf course, so I'm doing 7 miles every weekend. The good thing about it is I'm drinking 3 litres of water a day, as the gentleman said, and because I'm not eating a lot now, I would advise everybody, or medical, as long as they check it up. I do fasting, so I don't eat for 16 hours, and then, because I don't eat a lot, I eat in a certain window, and I've lost 3.5 stone. I was walking Sunday, I'd done 7.5 miles.
That's great. What are you most looking forward to doing with your grandson that you wouldn't have been able to do unless you got the weight off?
Playing football. I bought him a Welsh rugby ball, obviously, so we're playing about with that, and I'm chucking him about, but it's the... you've touched on it a lot, James. It's a confidence side now. Yes. I'm wearing better clothes. I've gone down 2 waist size, and
fantastic!
It's really good. I've started, if you don't mind, James. One of the things I phoned up was one of the things that would keep me motivated. I think is I've got a little golf TikTok account, and I've got over 1,200.
Go on, give yourself an advert.
If everybody can log into Tiger Taff, and I will start viewing my progress. Tiger Taff on TikTok.
That will help, because people will follow you, and it puts a little bit more, not pressure necessarily, but encouragement to keep on the right path, doesn't it?
Exactly. I want to lose another stone now by Christmas, so that's 4 stone
Well,
off.
Christmas is going to be tricky. That's why we've done it at the beginning of December, just to provide people with a little bit of inspiration, and that's what you've done, mate. That's what you've done, Andrew.
Yeah.
Taffy.
I'm not drinking much at all at the minute now, so I drink moderately, like you said.
Yes.
You've got to put the effort in with it, and that's what I'm doing at the minute, but the confidence it gives you, and...
Well, you've described it beautifully. You've described it beautifully, and people can follow your journey themselves now by getting onto Tiger Taff.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have done it last time, but now you're speaking about it and the encouragement and everything else, you know, I'm going to... Come on, this is the next kick I want. So thank you, James, for letting me do that.
Well, thank you for giving other people precisely the boost that you say we've given you. That's what it's all about, these conversations. That's why I like them so much. It was worth visiting this floor of the building today, wasn't it? I wonder what we're going to find next time we get back in the elevator and visit a floor that we are yet to reach. It is coming up to 11:59. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. There's no way I'm going to remember all of this. I've still got 3 woke watches and a missing word round. The missing word round might survive until tomorrow, but the woke watches, I don't know, I want to get them in today. One involves the Queen's son, one involves Samuel Pepys, and one involves football. They are all arguably woke watches. 2 of them actually contain the word, one of them doesn't, but it's arguably the most woke watchy thing of them all. Have I built up enough tension yet? It is now the job of Natasha Clark to build up some tension regarding PMQs.
I thought you described PMQs earlier as something that you're not enjoying anymore.
I didn't say enjoying. Did I say enjoying?
No, it wasn't. That wasn't the word.
No, it wasn't quite the right word. I don't know quite what the right word is, but it fills me with...
You were very disparaging about Prime Minister's questions.
I haven't found it very uplifting lately.
I don't think
Nor
politics
have you.
is very
don't
uplifting.
Give me that.
No, sorry, but I did I did consider texting you to say I'm always excited about Prime Minister.
Yes,
questions.
OK.
But yes.
We have got erotic fiction from a Reform UK politician, part 2, coming up later in the next hour. So
I look forward to that. That's pretty good. There's nothing more I can build anticipation with.
So what's she going to do today?
Well, obviously it's the Prime Minister's questions after the budget. So you would expect that to form. I think that's really the only Achilles heel that Kemi Badenoch has got to reach for at the moment. It is probably her strongest subject and probably has been for a while. And despite what you were just saying about the OBR and some of the things that the newspapers haven't said, there were some things that they did say that were slightly disparaging about Miss Reeves and the way that the way that it's all gone down. You know, Tom Joseph started of the OBR started that session by admitting his profuse apologies, saying it won't happen again for the leak of the OBR forecast that we were discussing. Exactly a week ago.
Do you agree that he's better when he knows what's coming? Because
Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I don't know, because I need to do another quick missed information. Actually, you've reminded me, because she might use this statistic.
Missed information.
Thank you, Emily, which I think comes straight out of Tufton Street. She tweeted, working families will now be £18,000 worse off than those on benefits, which is an extraordinary figure.
It is, yeah.
An extraordinary statement. And someone I rather respect on social media appears to have done the calculation. She seems to be comparing a family of 2 with no kids on the national living wage, where one is working part-time, with a family of 5 who are all registered disabled and claiming universal credit and housing benefits. So these figures which have got Tufton Street written all over them, in my humble opinion, I need to triple check that, but I can't imagine where else she's getting her information from, arguably exactly the same place that Liz Truss got her economics from. That comparison is hideous and pointless, but that's the kind of thing she might pop up and say.
Yeah, that's a bit odd. I'd be surprised if she went on something like that, which
She's
obviously...
tweeted it.
Yes, I saw that. It's obviously not... It's like comparing apples and pears, isn't it? It doesn't really work there. But there are questions. Rachel Reeves is clearly a bit of a weak point. Kemi Badenoch's repeatedly called for her to stand down. Questions about whether this was a real budget of fairness. Did she break the manifesto promises? Obviously, the head of the OBR has been forced to resign. We did have a lot of tax rises last year. The OBR has said a good chunk of that is to pay for additional welfare spending. That, obviously, you heard from her last week, was the main criticism of the budget. Reversal of things that they said they were going to do, things like the winter fuel allowance. OBR bods saying yesterday that told MPs yesterday that there had not been the good news that she had, or at least not she. This is what the crux of the question is. I don't think that her speech on November the 4th was misleading.
Oh, hang on, we'll find out.
I'll tell you later.
Yes, you will. Will you, though?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I first of all pay tribute to Sir John Stanley, who passed away yesterday. Sir John was a dedicated MP for 41 years, and we send our deepest condolences to his family. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister believe that when an organisation descends into total shambles, the person at the top should resign?
Mr. Speaker, can I first join in her comments in relation to Sir John, and I'm sure I speak for the whole House in that respect. Mr. Speaker, I was very proud to lead this party at the budget last week, where the Chancellor set out that we would protect the NHS, which we've done in the budget, create the conditions for economic stability, not repeating the mistake of austerity, and bearing down on the cost of living by taking £150 off energy bills. We're fixing the mess that they left, and I'm very proud to be doing so.
Mr. Speaker, he doesn't want to answer a question about taking responsibility because he likes to blame everyone else except himself, and so does the Chancellor. We now know that the head of the OBR was forced out for telling the truth, that the Chancellor did not need to raise taxes on working people. We also know that the Chancellor was briefing the media, twisting the facts, all so she could break her promises and raise taxes. Mr. Speaker, if she was a CEO, she would have been fired, and she might even have been prosecuted for market abuse. That's why we've written to the Financial Conduct Authority. So will the Prime Minister ensure the Chancellor fully cooperates with any investigation?
Mr. Speaker, she's completely losing the plot. She clearly didn't read May I pay tribute to Richard Hughes and his leadership of the OBR? He made very clear why he stepped down, and I've made very clear my support of the OBR. But she says take responsibility. Under this Chancellor, Mr. Speaker, growth is up this year, defeating and beating the forecast. Wages are up, more since the general election than in 10 years of the Tories. We've had, I think, 5 interest rate cuts. NHS waiting lists are down. We've had record investment into this country. We're turning the page on their austerity and reckless experiment on borrowing. I'd compare that record to them every day of the week.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister talks about losing the plot. Let me read to him what his own cabinet members are saying, and I quote, "The handling of this budget has been a disaster from start to finish." Yes. Who said that? Was it him? Was it her? In fact, I think it was probably her, actually. It was probably the Chancellor. In fact, Mr. Speaker, one of his ministers said the Chancellor and Prime Minister look weak and incompetent. The country agrees. We know that there were endless Treasury briefings to justify raising taxes on hard-working people to pay for benefits. And those briefings had real-world consequences. Hundreds of thousands of people drew down their pension, an irreversible act. So the Prime Minister pays tribute to the head of the OBR. If the head of the OBR had to resign over market-sensitive leaks, why is the Chancellor still in her job?
Mr. Speaker, last year they left us with a £22 billion black hole. This year, at the beginning of the process, the OBR did a productivity review on their record in office, and that cost an additional £16 billion that we had to find in the budget. But notwithstanding that, Mr. Speaker, we protected the NHS, waiting times are coming down. Notwithstanding that, we've got cutting borrowing at the fastest rate in the G7. Notwithstanding that, we've got £150 off energy bills. That's added to rail bills and prescription as well.
Order. Mr. Holden, your voice carries more than mine. The difference is yours will be carrying outside, not in the chamber. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what she doesn't understand that picking up a £16 billion tab for their failure is not a good starting point for any budget. And the OBR said yesterday, Mr. Speaker, that the Chancellor's speech was not misleading. So if the Leader of the Opposition had any decency, she'd get up now and apologise.
Mr. Speaker.
You might be enjoying a cup of tea with Mr. Holden if you carry on.
Mr. Speaker, no one believes a word that the Prime Minister says. We now know the black hole was fake, her book was fake, her CV was fake, even her chest claims are made up. She doesn't belong in the Treasury, she belongs in La La Land. They raised taxes on working people, that's £16 billion, was to increase benefits to protect them from their backbenchers. He now boasts about removing the 2-child benefit cap, but he used to say that it was unaffordable. He even removed the whip from 7 of them for wanting the same thing. He is very happy to throw them under a bus when it pleases him. So I asked the Prime Minister, how did it suddenly become affordable at the very time he needed to save his own skin?
Mr. Speaker, the vast majority of families we helped in the budget are in work. Yes. 3/4 of children in poverty are in working families. Their policy of nearly 10 years on the 2-child benefit cap had one result and one result only. It dragged hundreds of thousands of children into poverty. They should be utterly ashamed of that. And I'm very proud that we're lifting 500,000 children out of poverty, because I profoundly believe that every child should have a chance in life. Every child should be able to go as far as their talent will take them. So that's why we're lifting 500,000 out of poverty. But they're the same old Tories, the party of child poverty.
If all of this is true, why did he take the whip away from the people who are asking for it? let's remind the Chancellor, exactly a year ago today, on the 3rd of December 2024, the Chancellor said, we will never have to repeat a budget like this one. If only. He may have taken the whip away, but the rebels had the last laugh. The Prime Minister has lost. He can't run his own party. He can't, let alone the country, Mr. Speaker. Let me quote what the hard-left former Shadow Chancellor said. He said, we've won. He's right, isn't he?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Speaker, I've said repeatedly that bringing down child poverty is a moral mission, a political mission, and a personal mission. They drove hundreds of thousands of children into poverty who will pay the price for the rest of their lives for their failure. We're taking 500,000 of them out of poverty. Very proud to do so. That is good for children, it's good for the economy, and it's good for the NHS, who will have less of a burden on them. They should be ashamed of what they did on child poverty, and she should stand up and she should apologise.
Kevin Bendel.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell the Prime Minister, making the whole country poorer and destroying jobs is not how you keep children out of poverty. In the past week, we've seen broken promises, broken leadership, and a broken budget for Benefit Street. The Education Secretary is chuntering. Where is the money for the children on special educational needs? Where is it? Unemployment is up. It's coming out of her budget. She's shaking her head. She doesn't know where that money is coming from. But let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. Unemployment is up. There are more children now growing up in workless households because people are losing their jobs. It's not just the head of the OBR who's losing his job. Millions of people have been hung out to dry by their budget. And isn't the truth, Mr. Speaker, that behind it all is a Prime Minister who only cares about one person's job, his own?
Mr. Speaker, she wants to put 500,000 children back into poverty. She thinks the Chancellor should resign because the economy is improving. We are turning the page on their failure. We are bringing waiting lists down. We're bringing stability that cuts inflation and interest rates. And we're bringing down bills. We're building a brighter future.
Conversations about a new Ireland are deepening, with people from all sorts of backgrounds having serious, hopeful discussions about building something new. Yesterday here in Westminster, along with the member for South Antrim, who has a different view to me, we hosted two of the island's most respected journalists, making the case both for and against Irish unity. While both positions were argued, clear voice was at the time for careful preparation is now. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that while there is much work to do before any referendum, that to avoid a mess like Brexit, it is prudent and completely compatible with the Good Friday Agreement for the Irish and British governments to jointly prepare for constitutional change?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for her question? One of the greatest achievements of the last Labour government was the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, and we fully support that agreement, which brought peace and stability for Northern Ireland. It does, as she well knows, set out a process for future decisions, which under the agreement I support, and we are focused in working constructively with the Executive and others on all issues, including the record settlement under the budget for Northern Ireland.
The Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Leader of the Opposition in paying tribute to Sir John Stanley and sending our condolences to his family? I had the huge pleasure of working with him over a number of years on developing the relationship between our country and Korea, and he was always a true gentleman. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was in Royal Tunbridge Wells, where tens of thousands of people have had no water for 5 days. This is now a public health emergency, and shockingly, it's the second time in just 3 years when South East Water have let down the people of Tunbridge Wells badly. Parents are queuing up for bottled water for their kids. Pensioners are relying on neighbours to fetch some water for them. Businesses have closed down. Schools and GPs have been forced to shut. South East Water said it would be sorted on Monday, then yesterday, and today it still hasn't been sorted. So will the Prime Minister convene COBRA? Does he agree that it's time for him to get a grip of this crisis, so it is sorted.
Well, can I thank him for raising this really important issue? And it is shocking for all the reasons he set out. And I too have heard South East Water say, as he rightly says, actually Sunday into Monday, Monday into Tuesday, and Tuesday into Wednesday, that they were sorting it, and they still haven't sorted, and there's really serious consequences. And we are bearing down on that, as he would expect, because it's such a serious issue.
Sir Ed Davey.
Prime Minister's reply and the actions of the Water Minister, but I do think the government will need to do more because South East Water have failed so badly. If I can turn to the budget now, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's chief economic advisor has recommended a customs union with the EU as one of the most effective ways of generating growth, and we agree. So instead of hitting people with higher taxes in the middle of a cost of living crisis, will the Prime Minister change course in economic policy and listen to the piece of wise economic advice from his own economics advisor?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are getting closer relationships with the EU on a number of fronts, including trade and the economy, because that is good for businesses across our country, has been welcomed by them. We'll continue down that path, but we do have clear red lines in relation to the single market and the customs union. So within those constraints, we will move closer.
Dr. Becky Cooper.
Mr. Speaker.
12:15 is the time. One of us got 2 out of 2 on Ed Davies' questions, which I keep forgetting to discuss on air before PMQs actually starts. I wonder if you can guess who it was that got both of Ed Davies' questions correct. Was it me or was it LBC's political editor Natasha Clark? Find out after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
15 minutes after 12 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, although even a stop clock is right twice a day. And I suggested to Natasha off-air that Ed Davey would go in on Brexit and Tunbridge Wells. But what I didn't tell her was that I was cheating, because Matt texted me just before it started to say, can I predict Ed Davey will talk about Tunbridge Wells? The Lib Dems are playing a blinder, going in hard on South East Water, to be fair. And
what you're saying is you cheated.
Yes.
That's the main takeaway.
Absolutely cheated. But I owned up, so it's better than not owning up. I find myself more interested in Ed Davies' questions every week now than Kemi Badenoch's, but you were absolutely right. She tried to land as many punches as possible with regard to the budget and the OBR and the resignation. Does she must know that George Osborne, her predecessor on the front bench of the predecessor on the front bench of the Conservative Party, literally founded the OBR, so it would be completely independent of the Treasury. So the idea that the head of an OBR resigns because the Treasury wants him to resign is, well, either making a complete mockery of the reasons why the OBR was founded by the Conservative Chancellor George Osborne, or indicative of levels of ignorance that are really quite shocking even by her standards.
Yes, but they are also meant to be the watchdog that's meant to be working very, very closely with the Treasury, and it's clear that they lost the confidence of the Treasury and the Chancellor in recent weeks in terms of how this budget has unravelled. And like I say, you played those clips from the OBR chiefs earlier today. There is clear frustration from them about what the Treasury is doing. There was clear frustration from the Prime Minister on Monday about how the OBR had downgraded our productivity, saying, why didn't they do that under the Conservative Party's reign? Why did they choose to...
Starmer was quite snippy about that,
he was
wasn't
clearly really upset about how that...
To be clear, though, nobody thinks that Richard Hughes would have resigned if the OBR hadn't accidentally made the full details.
I think that probably was the final straw that broke the camel's back.
Because it had happened before. Most people probably weren't aware of this.
We didn't know that. I don't think anybody knew that.
But even now, many people won't be aware of this, that a journalist had spotted that you could predict what the URL would be.
It just changed from November to March.
And so it had happened before. So his position became entirely untenable when it emerged that actually this had happened before, and they kind of hadn't locked the door. They hadn't put in place measures to ensure that it wouldn't happen again. I mean, it was not a very edifying PMQs, really, was it?
No, it wasn't. If we can return back to did she mislead, did she not mislead? And that was actually something that I thought that Kemi Badenoch might go in on. Did you mislead the public? Because lots of people do think that the Chancellor has misled the public over that speech speech that she made on the 4th of November. Now, there was one point in that speech which I did think was potentially the only thing I think that was misleading in that speech, where she's talking about poor productivity. She said it's already clear that the productivity performance is weaker than previously thought. The OBR then came out and said in the budget that had been more than offset by increases in Treasury receipts.
But that's not a contradiction. It is.
It's not. It's just, it's misleading.
Yeah.
It's misleading because
it
she's
is
not...
weaker than previously thought.
Yeah, which is
this
true.
This is the point David Mars was making in front of committee yesterday.
Exactly, but it is not the case.
You can say she should have added further information.
Exactly.
Talk about it being offset. But a lot of people have made very big fools of themselves this week by claiming that productivity had actually improved, when it hadn't. It is worse than previously expected.
The Treasury then, the next week, Treasury officials then briefed us, including myself, that there was a 20 to 30 billion pound black hole in the public finances. That was categorically untrue.
It's just under 20 billion.
But it wasn't. There was never any 20 to 30 billion pound hole in the finances.
No, again, they've raised 26 billion pounds a year in tax.
Because they wanted to do
most
additional
of which
things.
is going to go into what they call fiscal headroom, which has been explained many times. More than 50% of it goes into the buffer against her own fiscal rules, which again David Mars explained yesterday the OBR is in favour of.
But the difference is because that is
25% goes on paying for the government's own U-turns on PIP and winter fuel allowance. However hard you work and however generous you are to the Chancellor, about 17% of the new taxes will go on new spending. Most obviously the 2-child cap on child benefit, which will cost the Treasury about £2.5 billion. So the claim that it has all been done to increase welfare spending is as ridiculous as the claim that the productivity situation hadn't been changed in any way whatsoever by the inflation promoted increase in the tax take.
But what
does the average punter think, listening to this? To PMQs, not to us.
The average punter thinks that Rachel Reeves did mislead the public, according to polls that have been done this week.
Because that's what people keep telling them.
Well, yeah,
and the same people that told them that are not telling them what David Mars said in the committee yesterday.
No, but I can tell.
Which is that let's listen to it again, shall we? The David Mars clip saying categorically that he doesn't believe that she did mislead anybody because productivity has been downgraded.
I don't think it was misleading if I may, my own view, I don't think it was misleading for the Chancellor to say that the fiscal position was very challenging at the beginning of that week.
Fiscal condition very challenging, but not that there was a 20 to 30 billion pound black hole as we were briefed by the Treasury, which is inaccurate and incorrect.
But that wasn't what she said in her budget speech.
No, she didn't say that in her budget speech, but the Treasury did.
Yeah,
the Treasury on behalf of her did.
Anyway, never mind.
Anyway,
the story this week is
we may
about
disagree
her
on
lying,
this.
and now you're saying it wasn't her that said it anyway.
No, I never said that.
She is a liar, is what I've been listening to all week.
I don't think that she's a liar.
I'm glad we're in agreement.
I don't think she's a liar, but I do think that Treasury officials, on her behalf, were misleading us about the scale of what we were told to be a 20 to 30 billion pound black hole, which was not the case. Every OBR briefing that they set out week on week was 4 to 5 billion pounds in surplus. There was one where I think it dipped below 5 billion, correct?
I'm not saying anything. I'm getting told off by everybody for interrupting you. So I think we're both right.
I think we're both right, but like I say, I was told this by Treasury officials, and I believe that they were misleading to us as journalists in the way that we
I believe that as well. That's not an interruption.
No,
that's an agreement. I'm going to let you speak uninterrupted now until 1 o'clock.
And I do believe that people feel misled. And you may be right that is because they have been told repeatedly by the Tories over the last week that they feel misled about that. But people... Oh, OK. James is raising his hand. Would you like... Is this a point of order?
Not just the Tories. The Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Express.
Sure. Okay.
Pretty much every outlet under the sun have been telling them this and not telling them, of course, that the... senior bloke at the OBR has now said that she was not misleading anybody. But anyway, enough agreement. Let's find something we can disagree about.
What else can we disagree about? I think we disagree about most things, do we not? Should she resign over this? No. Obviously, I don't believe that. I don't believe that she was misleading, but I do believe that some of her officials were on her behalf. Other things that were mentioned in Prime Minister's questions, that obviously the PM wanting to talk about the good things from the budget, the NHS, the economy, the cost of living down, but obviously many people aren't actually feeling that. So I think there is a sort of questions that we were talking about last week. Is it the case that she not misled? Is it the case that she wasn't able to break her manifesto promise on... You're smiling again.
I'm smiling at all the people saying well done for stopping interrupting you. And now you're prompting me to interrupt you again.
I thought you were reading a rude message. Okay.
No, on the contrary, I'd read those out.
Look, latest polls say that Labour and the Tories both doing terribly well, 19% each. Look at how they felt about the budget. Ipsos says 56% of the public more concerned about Britain's economy following the budget, 11% more reassured, 22% say neither, 52% of the country think they'll be worse off because of the budget, 50% think they and their family will be worse off because of the budget, 8% of people think the budget will leave the country as a whole better off. No matter what you think of whether the OBR, whether they misled them, whether they didn't, people do not like this budget, and it is fair criticism to say why.
What was the last budget that people did like?
It's a good point. Yeah, I'm struggling.
Nigel Lawson in 1985.
Wait, the one that cut loads of taxes?
Yes, that was... Was it 85? I've probably misremembered that as well. 26 minutes after 12 is the time. And so too, Ed Davey. Do we know about the Tunbridge Wells story? This is... I mean, if we didn't, we do now. It sounds absolutely hideous. And how's he managed to assume a leadership role on this? Just by dint of...
Oh, the Dems have talked about water quality for years. They've really made it their issue that we need to clean up Britain's waters, and hitting out at those companies which they believe are playing a part in that. And today the target is South East Water, who have left residents in Tunbridge Wells and surrounding areas without water, without running clean water, for 5 days, very much a public health emergency. I thought Keir Starmer's answer on that was pretty weak. You know, we need to do more on this. Well, mate, people are literally relying on bottled water, and GPs and businesses are shutting. So pretty poor there.
And then Brexit, which is it's not going to go away, is it? But have you seen Daniel? I think Ian Dale's water may not be. I think he's okay, is he? I think this came up in an editorial meeting earlier. Ian Dale's water supply is okay.
Thank goodness.
He famously hails from Tunbridge Wells. I can't remember why that was newsworthy not too long ago, but I'm sure that it was. And then the Brexit stuff, which I find enduringly fascinating. Daniel Finkelstein in the Times today suggesting Labour should campaign on rejoining. Not much sign of Keir Starmer doing that anytime soon.
I think
1988 was the budget that I was thinking of.
One of the problems with this government, one of the problems with Keir Starmer, is that he doesn't have the courage of his convictions. And you heard him actually there. The only one thing that he was passionate about was the two-child benefit cap and why he felt that the Labour government should be lifting hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty. That's an argument that I think people on his backbenches want to hear from him far, far more. What do you believe in? What are the things that you like and dislike? And Brexit is one of them where it feels like he's too on the fence on this as an issue. And will the Labour Party change course? I don't think so. I think he's too frightened of reopening that Pandora's box around Brexit. He privately probably totally agrees with his economic advisor that it would be a great thing to do.
And with John Major and with
but I don't think he's politically brave enough, or I don't think he's politically strong enough to be able to make that argument, especially when you're on 20% in the polls.
I think you're probably right. I mean, does there come a point when he's got nothing to lose, though?
Possibly. He's got a lot to lose, though, hasn't he? He's Prime Minister. He's got everything to lose, right?
As the election looms ever closer, and if his situation doesn't improve in the polls, then they break glass. I
still don't think so.
No,
I don't think it's got that.
Because
point.
It's him. It's not a question of whether we think he should or not. It's a question of whether this politician will.
No, and I don't think he's willing to nail his colours to the mast. There's also a question about how long do we wait between referendums, and how long is it okay to let the people's vote decide and set an agenda of travel before you change your mind on it. And obviously we talk about Scotland and independence in the same vein, right? And people say it should be a generation before we have another vote like that. How long is a generation? 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 50? And there will be many people that argue that we have not had a generation since either the Scottish or Brexit referendum in order to let that issue settle. There, however, will be a lot of people making that argument that if you do want that economic growth that you so desire and you have made your government completely around, then why not pull that emergency lever? I don't think he'll do it.
No, I don't either. Matt earned his right to a second bite of the cherry by predicting that Ed Davey would ask about Tunbridge Wells, and he is telling us both that it's largely down to the local MP Mike Martin in Tunbridge Wells, who has stepped up and got considerably angrier than most MPs. So good on him. Is there anything, this isn't really a question inside either of our fields, but is there anything the government can do in these sort of situations? They can punish the water company later, perhaps, but they can't sort of start fixing water supplies or
it can obviously yell at them behind closed doors to get a move on. Ed Davey suggested that they send the army in to help.
Yeah.
whether that's something that can actually help.
Great line for opposition.
It's a great line.
Send the army in. What are they going to do? Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Just send them in. I'm sure they can help.
Yeah.
It's a bit like when they demand Parliament be recalled at every single opportunity. I'm not quite sure why, but we must debate it in Parliament because it's our democratic right to do so.
That's Ashley Clark. Many thanks indeed. The time is 12:30, and Amelia Cox has your headline.
James O'Brien on LBC.
And up pops honest Bob Jenrick like a bad penny, I think is probably the nicest thing I can say. Waxing lyrical all over the shop about David Lammy's slightly... it was a bit of a damp squib in the end, wasn't it? The abolition of jury service for trials, or the option of opting for jury service in trials where the sentence is going to be 3 years or fewer. But one story that hasn't received the coverage that you might have expected, given the gravity of the subject matter, is reports on judges, particularly immigration judges, well, specifically immigration judges, being forced to flee their homes following Robert Jenrick's threats to remove activists. This follows a campaign in which he highlighted what he chose to refer to as activist judges. I remember a previous Tory being told to stop doing this. I think it was Priti Patel by the Law Society. I mean, there was one case, wasn't there, of somebody actually going into a law firm that dealt with immigration cases and attacking or seeking to attack a lawyer, and they were asked to stop using this sort of language. Robert Jenrick obviously didn't get the memo. James Tapper has written it up for The Observer, which is cutting the mustard in a spectacular fashion at the moment in its new guise, in its post-Guardian ownership guise. And James joins me now. Correlation is not causation, James. So while it's true to say that judiciary, members of the judiciary have been forced to flee their homes, and it's also true to say that this follows Robert Jenrick's threats to remove activists, how confident can we be that the two moments are linked inextricably?
Well, that's a very good question. As you say, correlation and causation are not the same thing. Certainly, the families of judges who I spoke to felt that one was that they were not having any threats against them, and then the cascade of news coverage and Robert Jenrick's campaign led to a situation where they were suddenly having threats against them. So,
and I mean, he spoke of a list. I mean, it's very seasonal, isn't it? Although when Santa makes his list, it's not quite as unpleasant as this, of more than 30 judges. And you identified the fact that these posts, his own posts, Robert Jenrick's posts, have been circulated online among particularly toxic far-right groups.
Yes. I mean, I think we should say at the outset that he certainly wouldn't intend for any of his campaign to have caused threats against judges, but I think the impact of this sort of coarsening of the discourse is that people decide that action needs to be taken, and those people can make threats which are very unpleasant.
What sort of things have the families you've spoken to experienced, and what sort of numbers are we discussing?
Yeah, it's hard to. There's no survey data that we can point to, but certainly I'm aware of at least 6 immigration judges who've been targeted. Some have had to move out of their homes. Some had their addresses published online by far-right activists. Others have had panic buttons and other home security measures installed after police advice. One judge was told, "We know which bus your child catches," which was particularly chilling. And some of the impacts that the families have seen is that their lives have been completely upended. You know, one of the partners of a judge told me that it completely removed their feeling of security in their own home. They're worried that their children would be caught up in it. A son of another immigration judge checks his parents' location constantly on the Find My app on the iPhone. It's very chilling.
And of course, the difficulty they have, and you as a journalist trying to report on this also has, is that they don't really, or they're certainly, I don't know whether they're allowed to, but they're certainly not encouraged to talk to the media, the judges themselves. That's why you're relying largely on the testimony of partners and children.
That's exactly right, yes. Judges are strongly discouraged from talking to journalists or indeed publicly in general, because there's a perception that this could have an impact on how people perceive their impartiality, which ironically is the point that Robert Jenrick makes, that they shouldn't be talking. It's, as you point out, it's not just him who's been having a pop at judges over the years, but I think the temperature has risen in a way that is clearly being felt by people.
I was just checking my own memory there, James, briefly, because it was 5 years ago, almost to the day, that 800 former judges and legal professionals wrote to or signed a letter accusing Boris Johnson and Priti Patel of hostility towards lawyers representing migrants seeking asylum. They warned that the Prime Minister then and the Home Secretary were endangering lawyers and called upon them to behave honourably. Fat chance. And we know that last year, in fact this is in your article, a neo-Nazi was detained indefinitely after launching a terror attack on an immigration law firm that he selected after reading a Daily Mail article 3 days earlier. That came up in court. Inevitably, we're seeing similar stories play out in the United States after Donald Trump launched similar anti-judge and anti-law rhetoric. Did they have any recourse, these judges or their families? Do they have any case against Jenrick, who is, of course, himself the Shadow Attorney General, or any of them seeking legal advice?
There was... this is slightly hard to discuss in some respects, but essentially I understand that two judges did take legal advice relating to what they could do. I think the motivation, from what I understand from the families, is not that they wanted to sue or to take any action relating to, for example, defamation or anything like that. It was much more a sense that it's perfectly reasonable and legitimate to criticise a judge's decision, but they were concerned that the accuracy of the reporting of the decisions was very unfair, and you see that with some of the issues. Yes. Another part of the article was relating to a report by the Bonavero Institute of Human Rights, which looked at the reporting of how immigration cases had taken place, and they found that many of the decisions which were highlighted by Robert Jenrick and other people were very poorly understood. For example, the most famous is the chicken nuggets case, where supposedly an Albanian criminal was prevented. His deportation was prevented because a judge decided that his son, who I believe was autistic, was sensitive to foods, and so was unhappy. Didn't like the taste of chicken nuggets in Albania. The problem with that is that although that is a line in one of the judgments, that wasn't the only reason. In fact, the Bonavero Institute says that it's not the reason why this case was originally decided by a judge that the criminal shouldn't be deported. And all the reporting of the case took place after a higher tribunal overturned that decision.
So 8 months before Jenrick commented on the case, exactly. the decision that he was commenting on, and he failed to mention this, had been overturned on appeal anyway.
Exactly. So what we don't know is what actually happened to the criminal, because the appeal tribunal said, well, it needs to be reheard. So they sent it back to what they call the first-tier immigration tribunal. So we don't know the outcome of that case yet. So it is possible that he's still in the country, but it's quite likely that he's not.
And if he is, it has nothing to do with chicken nuggets.
Exactly.
0.73% is an extraordinary statistic, also from the Bonavero's analysis of Home Office data, because judging by headlines and coverage, and even, dare I say, the occasional radio programme, you would think that pretty much every frustrated deportation of a foreign national offender that the country country ever sees is a consequence of a human rights claim, but the actual data shows that only 0.73%, less than 1% of successful appeals against deportation by foreign national offenders involve a human rights claim in the 15 months to June 2021. That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I've never known the reality to be so at odds with the coverage, and I was here for Brexit.
Yes, I remember it well. You're absolutely right. It's an extraordinarily small number. I mean, the thing is that there's a very large number of cases that are heard in the Immigration Tribunal, and it's just the human rights element does not come up that much. I mean, another interesting statistic from their report was that the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, has only ruled against the UK 13 times since 1980. That's not really the impression one would get from
13 times since 1980.
Yes, and of those 13 times, just 4 of them were relating to the right to family life, which is the point that is usually made.
And this is the argument of the people now agitating to come out of the European Convention of Human Rights, because of 4 cases since 1980.
Yes.
Which they may even agree with if they bothered to find out the detail.
Absolutely.
Good Lord. Is there more to this? Is there a follow-up article coming, or is it all contained within the piece that you published last week in The Observer?
Well, there may be.
Watch this space.
I think so. This is not confined to immigration judges. There are certainly issues relating to threats against judges more generally. And in fact, as we're probably aware, this is not only about judges. This is also about, even MPs and other people in public life have threats made against them. I think this is happening more and more, and there are certainly. It feels as if, as you say, and this is happening in the US as well, and I think people in public life need to really understand that we need people to step up. We need judges, we need magistrates, we need MPs, we need councillors, and if it becomes so toxic that people need to take measures, they need to move out of their homes, then what happens to society? Who runs things, who actually takes responsibility, who steps up. And rule of law is a fragile thing. I've lived overseas, I'm aware of personal interactions with people. The rule of law in the UK is like is like a sort of collective hallucination. We all kind of agree that we're not going to go around beating each other up, or that somebody who's in charge gets to make a decision without anybody having recourse to the courts. We need the rule of law. It's very important. We need to defend it.
Well, here we are in 2025, stating what would once have been the bleeding obvious. But thank you for stating it. We do indeed need the rule of law. And if you don't know why, just imagine or have a little look at history. James Tapper of The Observer, many thanks indeed for that. No mention, of course, of any of this in Robert Jenrick's article in the Daily Mail today, in which he returns to membership of the ECHR without, of course, acknowledging the statistics that James just shared with you. Yet another example of stories that you are not getting coverage of in the places that the opposing voices are loudest. So by all means do both, but don't just do one. That's all. If you're going to talk about Rachel Reeves being a liar, talk about the bloke from the OBR saying that she didn't mislead anybody. If you're going to talk about human rights in the context of immigration, talk about the actual statistics. If you're going to give Robert Jenrick space in your newspaper to rant about David Lammy's plans for jury, also write about the judges whose families are convinced that the threats of violence and the horrible language and attacks that they are facing are a consequence of Robert Jenrick's behaviour. Otherwise, you're kind of undermining something almost as precious as the rule of law. It's 12:47.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 10 to 1. Henry Riley is here with what was never intended to be a series, Henry.
Oh.
I was joking when I said we must do this more often. Last time you were here, you were sharing with us details of some erotic fiction written by a Reform UK politician. I notice you now have the entire book with you.
I do, and it was an absolute bargain at £12 from Waterstones. Let me tell you, James.
I sold at least one copy.
Yeah, well, and some of the reviews on there are quite good. Just to obviously circle back and remind people, this is Councillor Rob Ford. He brought this up himself. This was him speaking a few weeks ago.
A few days ago, I discovered so-called complaints against me, all relating to my novel writing. It's astonishing that my name can be defamed simply because I wrote an erotic novel and got it published by a major company. And I then mentioned it to a few people in the building behind me.
In Kent, this is Councillor Rob Ford.
Yes, the place where we all know you can find out how a Reform UK government would perform by having a look at how they perform in Kent. Luke in Sevenoaks earlier in the programme, very keen to see Reform in charge, but he already knows what happens when they're in charge because he lives in Kent.
They've lost 8 of their 56 councillors, now down to 48. So they've lost 15% of their councillors, one every 27 days in Kent.
One every 27 days, yes.
I've got the book. I have to say, there's erotic fiction.
You can't say a lot of this stuff, mate. Well, I've got this with me. I don't know if... Should I hold it up? Because then people could, zoom in on... I mean, I don't know what the rules are. I've got the Ofcom list of words that you're not allowed to say on the radio. But just to be clear, this is part 2 of erotic fiction written by Reform UK politicians, and we're still essentially dancing around part 1. How fruity
Can I show you that bit? There's a bit with a star and a bit I've sort of highlighted there.
You, yeah, here we go.
But the bit with the star's definitely out of the question, I think.
Sugar.
Yeah. A bit more than that, actually, there.
Okay, yeah. I can't. You can't do any of... No.
Well, there's one bit on the other side.
It's never ending.
I was going to try...
Here?
Yeah, there's another post-it note. Sorry, it's all sort of muddled, isn't it?
Yelping and bashing the bed sheets with her hands, she wraps the sheets around... What? You're telling me off now? I've got the Ofcom list in front of me. I'm checking the words.
I found some passages.
This is filth. This is absolute filth.
I've got some good news for you as well, James.
Yeah.
If you go right to the back of the book, there's a part 2 imminent. Not imminent, but there's a part 2 tease. So Diaries of a Colourful Life Asia. I think it's the last page. So we may well be getting an update. And this is a sort of nom de guerre as well, because Councillor Rob Ford.
Yes.
It's about a man called Rob, but obviously it's not based. It's
not him.
R.W. Mitson is the author.
Right. So Rob is the hero and the author, but they're 2 different Robs.
They're 2 different Robs,
and he's off to Thailand.
Well, I've been studying this, James. Should I read you I've got...
I'm worried now. Eleanor's barking in my ear about inappropriate language. I've got the Ofcom thing here. We can't go... We can go mild, can we?
I think this is... I've checked this with Keith.
OK.
Eyes icy blue. She took my hand. Are you coming? She whispered in my ear with a warm, sexy voice. My body trembled with a lustful craving, so I decided to follow her. I wanted to kiss her, yes. I pursed my lips as I shut my eyes, and quickly she pecked me on the lips.
Ever had. Stop it.
This is my big sliding doors moment, James. Jim opened a second bottle of champagne, spraying it all over us as the girls screamed loudly with joy. Sitting back in the hot tub with 2 sexy women on each side of me, my arms resting on the rim of the hot tub and my head tilted back. As I stared up at the stairs, I saw... Anyways, that's one of the bits. There's one other bit, I think, which is fine as well. That bit I definitely can't read. Sorry, I've actually lost the right bit. Here we go. No.
No, not that. No.
No. Is that bit all right that I've highlighted or not?
This is enormous. No!
OK, well, let's
Good Lord! Right, part 2 of... Who knew that... people are trying to get me into trouble on this one. Somebody... Julian's been in touch. Say, James, can you read the list of words you're not allowed to say so that we can all be very careful not to use them when we ring in? Thank you, Julian. I won't be doing... Some of these words, I don't even know what they mean. But there is a part 2 of erotic fiction written by Reform UK politicians. Who knew?
This is Nadine Dorries.
Oh, no.
A 2015 book, A Girl Called Eleonora.
Yes.
And here we go. In fact, I'm not going to read that one. Her nails clawed at his back and her teeth sank into his lips until he felt his own blood, mixed with hers, sip into his mouth. The pain was exquisite until an explosion of light engulfed him as he closed his eyes and screamed out in ecstasy. He saw a beautiful young woman with flaming red hair, and green eyes, and she was somewhere in the future smiling down. There's this is another bit as well, separate part, a girl from Eleonora.
Hang on, Andy's been in touch. He says, please get him to stop.
Okay. Sorry, Andy.
Melanie wants to know, will Henry be doing the audio book?
Nadine Dorries actually voiced some of them, some of the audiobooks. Hadn't done this one. Her lips encased him, thank you, Keith, sending his senses reeling as her hair slipped and fanned out. In fact, I'm going to cut that one short, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
And there was one last bit. He would take what he wanted, how he wanted, as was the way with all the men of Ballyford. He was his father's son. She would not dominate him. Her part of anatomy, cold and firm, pressed hard into his chests, and her wasted skeletal hips, sharp as knives, jabbed into his own soft flesh. So there's lots to go on.
So that's part 2 of a series that was never supposed to extend beyond part 1, erotic fiction written by Reform UK politicians. Is it true that there is a part 3?
We've got a third one, which is incredible. So
Are you serious?
Dr. David Bull, who is the chairman of Reform.
Right.
He's the one who he believes in ghosts. He used to sort of be a paranormal presenter, TV doctor. Cool and Celibate, Sex or No Sex is the name of the title. And
is it erotic fiction or is it a sort of self-help book?
It's a...
Could be both.
Here is the first book of a new type of girl and boy power, one that encourages
don't spoil it. This is all coming up in the next episode.
Yeah, sorry.
We've got a name for it.
That's the bio. Cool and Celibate, Sex or No Sex, and it's currently sitting in my Amazon basket.
So that's next week's episode. Have we got a name for this feature? Erotic fiction by Reform UK politicians or 50 Shades of Farage?
Very good.
Thank you very much. I stole that off text. I don't know who sent that in, but they deserve the credit, not me. Before I go, I have got time for another very quick missed information, actually. This is an absolute
Missed
killer.
information.
Thank you, Henry. Emily. I mentioned earlier that some people who are not addressing the OBR evidence to the Select Committee yesterday are instead pretending to be very exercised by Rachel Reeves's chess exploits. And there's an update on this. Rachel Reeves called herself the Under-14 Girls Chess Champion after winning the Under-14 Girls Chess Championship. But the Times have dug somebody up, an Oxford graduate no less, who is very cross about this because she didn't win the championship that boys were allowed in. So this is the latest evidence that you can't trust Rachel Reeves. She won the Under-14 Girls Chess Championship and boasted about it, but she didn't win the Mixed Gender British Championship, which she didn't claim she'd won or indeed boast about, and therefore you can't trust Rachel Reeves. Chapter 304, and yet another rather shining example of...
Missed information.
Thank you, Emily. Was this the most packed show we've ever done? It was extraordinary. It's almost like a normal radio programme. I think we'll return to me meandering aimlessly for the entire 3 hours without taking any calls at all tomorrow. If you missed any of it, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app, where you can stay up to date on the top stories and opinions, put your news categories in the order you want, pause, rewind live radio, listen to a range of podcasts, including mine. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
Do I need to report you both to HR?
I don't think so. It's
display?
Henry. Henry has ambushed me live. Do you want the list of words that you're not allowed to say, or have you committed it to memory?
Committed to memory, I hope.
James O'Brien on LBC.